wreck avoidances,
Stay low. He's high, stay low.
daring passes,
Oh, you're gonna get it.
silly jumps,
Oh my god, a drive-through.
the thrill of victory,
They're against the wall. Good one, Mark. Stay low.
and the occasional mishap.
My sand crash.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
A new beginning with familiar faces. For the first time, Lionheart is going back to its roots. 18 races to determine who is the best and the most exciting form of auto racing on the planet. 200-mile-an-hour Indy cars, inches from disaster or glory. There can only be one inaugural champion, whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. Find out next. The Lionheart Speedway Series, presented by DMLC Racing Channel, starts now.
The Lionheart Racing Series, powered by HyperX, returns to the virtual Homestead Miami Speedway. The Sunshine State is the traditional curtain jerker for Lionheart, but today it marks the start of the Triple Crown journey for the drivers in the Lionheart Speedway Series. It's been rookies making their mark on this championship, and Alexis Newsom has already visited HyperX Victory Lane twice this season. Can she make it 3 in a row here at the GraaFix eSports 300, presented by Minus 273. Welcome back to RaceSpottv and continued coverage of the Lionheart Racing Series, powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com, and don't forget to use the promo code Lionheart15, that's LIONHRT15, for 15% off all orders. My name is Arjuna Kenkipati, and alongside for today's action, as always, is Justin Prince with live timing and scoring powered by our partners at timing71.org. Head over to their website using the link racebot.wtf/Indy. TV cameras provided by RaceBot's own Tyler Maxson. Let's dive straight into our sim experience countdown to green. And Justin, this is the start of a very exciting journey, the Triple Crown. And while today is only a regular race, no double points on the agenda, it does represent the first step of a long road in towards the rest of these Triple Crown events.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of intense pressure for some of these drivers to perform here, especially with this being one of the key races early on this season. Especially with the history when it comes to Lionheart here at Homestead, with some great battles, some great strategy. And for those who watch the IndyCar Series and the Retro Series races here, both of those races were pivotal for track position and qualifying as well. Expecting the same tonight, especially with some of the races coming up. But overall, I think we're in for what's expected to be a thrilling race that could see a mix of everything, from strategy to intrigue to great fighting. And don't forget about the aero wash.
And of course, in this DW12, no in-car tools like the IndyCar Series had when they came here earlier in March to kick off their season. We'll have a little bit of a break heading out of Miami before we head into the month of May. 3 races, Atlanta, Phoenix, and Gateway. 2 short tracks and the 1.5 miler. That will be an interesting swing there. Let's take a look very quickly at the driver standings presented by the DMLC Racing Channel, and I mentioned it straight off the bat. Alexis Newsom, Justin, with 2 victories in the last couple of races, has really stormed to the top. She's now joined up with the factory-backed team. Leads this championship by 4 points from Tony Schowen, who's been very consistent on the season. You do notice a bit of a trend, though, in the team names. It's only Adrenaline Motorsport and Team Raceverse that have been consistent across their lineup.
Yeah, all their drivers have been consistent when it comes to finishing inside the top 10 at least once throughout this championship so far. But for Tony Schowen, one of the main things when it comes to him has been consistently running inside the top 10. Even when he's been marred in traffic, he's migrated his way usually up towards the front in the closing stages, and that's in part why he's one of just 2 drivers, including Matt Taylor, that have finishes all inside the top 10 so far this season, and that consistency is important when you're trying to battle for a championship. For Newsom, the struggles early on at Twin Ring Motegi coming into play, or the early part of the season, I should rather say, started coming into play with those championship standings, and that's why, in part, it's so tight.
And you'll notice as well, I mean, you've only got 3 non-rookies, and they are the Adrenaline Motorsports teammates, so it's very much been rookies on the top. And when you take a look at these team standings presented by HyperX, Justin, that kind of reflects itself. Adrenaline Motorsport, almost a 100-point advantage now, but the battle for second is quite close, and then from 5th on back, you start getting a bit more strung out. But at the end of the day, we're very early on in the season. Double points will come into effect much later on, and I don't think we can count these standings as anywhere close to being locked in at only round 4 of this championship.
Still very early to tell how things are going to go in terms of teams and whatnot, but you can tell with the trends, the momentum of some of these organizations, especially when you combine the efforts of Race First Black and Red. Both of those organizations and both of their drivers as a whole have been very fast and have led laps and have been some of the favorites to win some of these races. So it's been an intriguing championship so far, yes, but the consistency as a whole, as a consistent group throughout the campaign, is going to be critical if you want to be able to secure the team championship. It's still too early to tell how things will fare out, but it's still showing trends on how things may fare out in terms of some of your front runners in some of these early races in the calendar.
And I do think the veterans, I'm not just biased because I'm somewhat part of the Adrenaline Motorsports crew. I do think they've had a good start to the season. They'll be having a 4th driver joining them. These are the rookie standings. A quick look at these presented by buttkicker, and it is Newsom that has a give or take 20-point advantage over Dean Moll, who of course took victory in the first round of this championship. But at the end of the day, Justin, lots of these rookies very, very strong. The one that I think we should highlight very quickly here is Barrett Rolfe of Ascari Autosport, a GT Academy competitor in the past, so he's got experience at the top levels of sim racing, and he's parlayed that very nicely into the first couple of races of his Lionheart career.
And I'm really interested to see how that parlays into the future in his career in Lionheart in general, because in the overall standings, he's actually in a tie for 13th. That's how quickly he's come to grips with these cars. In each race so far, Arjuna, he's had to come his way through the back of the field to the front. And he's been one of the few drivers to do it with strong efficiency. It's been incredible to see the talent from Barrett so far this season. I eventually wouldn't be surprised to see him up towards the top of the standings, towards the closing stages. But it's going to be more difficult since he is a race behind everybody in terms of starts, and that's coming into fruition throughout these standings so far. Otherwise, we might be talking about him in the scrap with Newsom as well in some of these race victories, as well as the championship standings for the rookie and overall standings.
I think qualifying, though, is where Rolfe has to just find the correct approach. I mean, you have a similar setup to the race, so I mean, interesting kind of proposition. Let's talk a bit about the series details before we get into the minutiae of the event itself. Presented by -273, the premier name in karting gloves. Their industry-leading gloves are super lightweight and durable, made of a breathable poly spandex. Whether you're a kart or a sim racer, -273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more information on -273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit -273.biz, and don't forget to use the promo code -273LHRS15 for 15% off all orders. And Justin, I mentioned it earlier. Let's harp on it once more here, though. Dallara DW12, custom fixed setup, but no in-car tools. That was, I think, crucial to when we came here at the start of the season with the Dallara IR18. We saw drivers very much relying on them to make their cars work in traffic. Here, we've said it in the last couple of races, it's all about the 2 feet, it's all about the 2 hands, and how the driver gets the most out of the car.
And you have to also adjust your adaptability and driving style to that in turn. It's going to be very important to adapt your driving lines in turn to where some of the other competitors are running, because drivers have talked about air wash being a major factor here for tonight's race. In turn, you need to be prepared for some unexpected moves, or drivers to take some bold moves to try and break away and get some clean air and try and get in front of others as a result of the traffic. So it's going to be an intriguing race in that part of Arjuna, as well as drivers adapt and try and battle in these custom fixed setups tonight.
And so these are the series details, 7,277 in cash and prizes on the line. Quick look at the event details. The first Triple Crown race at Homestead in Lionheart history, traditionally the series opener and the run from March into December and Auto Club. Pole position has never won this race, and most cautions only 6 and only 3 in the fewest, so it's not a race where we expect too many cautions over 300 miles of racing. Multiple two-time winners, and we've got a guest appearance. I mentioned 4 Powerslide Motorsports driver Andrew Kinsella, who is the setup maker for the series as well, Justin. He makes a guest appearance. He won on his Lionheart debut back in Season 5 in this very car. Watch out for the Canadian, I think, to be a strong contender here today.
Absolutely, and it would allow the opportunity to add to those multiple winners. He's been fairly quick in practices throughout the day so far and throughout some of these practice races. It's going to be intriguing how Kinsella runs today. But keep in mind that, as we talked about, drivers are going to have to adapt, and this is the type of race where it normally ends under green. The pole sitter has never finished in the race win here, but it's also only finished one time under caution flag. That was from Big Joe Hassard back in the day. So in other words, this is the type of race where the strategy is going to be very critical for tonight as well if you want to win, because you can't depend on the caution flags to come out all the time.
And it's a longer race, 300 miles. It doesn't meet the Triple Crown criteria for a 500-mile race. The organizers not content to really force drivers to do 500 miles on a weekday. The rest of these Triple Crowns, they take place on a weekend, so 500 miles, double points. And with 300 miles comes potential for some late race splash and dash. Let's take a quick look at the track itself, Justin, and talk about this 1.5-mile track. I think the graphic here maybe belays the difficulty, because we see a lot of the time, even in this Indy car, cars migrate their way to the high line. They just find it easier to work in dirty air.
Well, that's in part because of the progressive banking, where the higher the banking goes, the faster you can go. 18 to 20 degrees of progressive banking, 3 degrees down the straightaways here at Homestead Miami Speedway. The track record in real life was set by Sam Hortons Jr. back in 2006 with a 24.4. Drivers today have been running in the 25-second bracket in practice and in the early stages of some of these tests throughout the day. As well, when it comes to that dirty air, expect those drivers to try and indeed migrate to the top, but also have the difficulty of making sure they don't go into the safer barrier. Several drivers in some of the practice races and some of the practice starts and restarts just prior to the start of tonight's action were having difficulty keeping their cars out of the fence. So in other words, this is going to be a very tricky race with speeds of more than 210 miles an hour down the straightaways.
And we'll say hello to you very quickly before qualifying as well. Solo car qualifying, and this will be important, Justin. We saw it when we came here for both the IndyCar and the Retro Opener. Track position is vital, and if you can't make up positions through attrition, you're very much finding yourself having to make some rather desperate moves to get through the pack.
And in some of the testing, I've seen drivers make some desperate moves, in fact, willing to take it 3 wide, willing to try and go for some sliders to try and move to the top line and clear the drivers in front. This is going to be a race where, in turn, you're going to see a lot of aggressive moves as a result of that dirty air and aero wash, but also some drivers may elect to go with the patient type of strategy. Try and go pick off drivers one at a time, because it's going to take some time to make some of the moves as seen in both the IndyCar and the Retro Series. But there's also the chance of a lot of slingshots and back and forth as well with some of these races. As we've seen, there was some drivers who were able to go back and forth a little bit in some of these races just a few weeks ago.
So 2 and a bit minutes left in this solo car qualifying session. 2 laps for drivers to set their fastest lap times provisionally. Nick DeGroot, Chris Stouffer have matched each other with a 25.049. There is nothing in it at the top. But it will be DeGroot that starts on pole if things hold right now. Alexis Newsom, race winner in the last couple of races, provisionally in 5th. And we'll wait now for a couple of big guns to make their way to the front. One name, of course, that we'll be watching out for is Tony Schau in second place in the championship. I am waiting as well for, here we go, Jason Galvin to roll himself out onto track, because we saw Galvin take a very impressive victory in the IndyCar Series, Justin, at Phoenix not long ago.
And it was an emotional victory because, as we talked about, with his charity on board for that race, Thumbs Up Cancer Down, it was a charity very important for him. Member of the board for the charity, him and his wife, and also was one where he had to work for it. Back and forth for the race lead. Had to claw his way to the lead on the outside line. And in turn, it became one of the more iconic moments so far this season. Galvin's going to be very quick, I think, tonight as well. If he can get the track position, was one of the quickest drivers in practice, Arjuna.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It was an emotional victory and one in which he beat Adam Blocker, so that is one that you always take pride in. Look at Tony Schau and painting the white line right now on this second lap as he builds up speed. 25.171. Is that going to be good enough to even get him up into the top 10? No, it's not. 23rd. He'll have a lot of work to do, as will Barrett Rolfe, who is right around with Tony Schau as well right now, done with qualifying. Jason Galvin, where is he? Provisionally 28th. He's got one more lap, Justin, and he's doing the same thing as Schau, minimizing the distance all the way down on the white line.
Seen a couple drivers actually going all the way underneath that white line, down on the apron, down the front stretch, but how about a 25.075? But with the pace and how tight it is, Arjuna, this is some of the tightest qualifying we've seen all season so far. The top 15 are separated by only a couple 100ths.
And with that, it's already time to go trackside and take a look at our starting grid here from Homestead, Miami. So here's a look at our butt kicker starting grid. Tyler Groff with the late run for a 25.042. He gets pole position. Nick DeGroot, Chris Stouffer, nothing to separate them in terms of timing, but it's DeGroot who lines up on the outside of row number 1. He's been impressive in the last couple of weeks here. What can he do? Stouffer then on his outside will be Mike Rigney in the 00 with Vern Hawkins on the inside of row 3. Alexis Newsom, championship leader and race winner the last 2 times, starts on the outside of that row. James Grahula in the simracing merch eSports car on the inside of row 7. Charles Teed on the outside with Chris Fowler and Craig Forsyth on the edge of the top 10. Matt Taylor in 11th with Mark Cohn on his outside. And we'll cycle through the 30-plus car grid here. Jeff Seong in the 18 on the inside of row 7 with the Canadian Andrew Kinsella making a return to the DW12. He won here a couple of years ago. Jason Galvin in 15th. Paul Jenkins in 16th with Trevor Malone 17th. Joe Branch rounding out row 9 of this grid with George Anzaldo, the series organizer, and Alex Guyon on the edge of the top 20. Ron Hacker in 21st. Ken Hacker in 22nd, so it's a family affair on row 11 with AJ Musselman and Alexander Van der Sant in row number 12. Matt Wagner for Dark Horse Motorsports on the inside of row 13 alongside Emerson Santos for Dragon Racing. Tony Schau in the Adrenaline Motorsports car, second in the championship all the way back in 27th. Watch for Schau and Barrett Rolfe to be rocketing up from row 14. Christopher Kresge in 29th. Luis Gonzalez Nunez in the 30th position. Final couple of cars not setting qualifying times. Michael Hagstrom, Matt Houston, Eric Schaus, and then Jim Brooks, the 34th and final car in this grid. We'll have a number of onboard cameras to take a look at in today's race. Let's start with Matt Taylor. He's got the HyperX on board. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game.
Tower Graph has your GraaFix eSports onboard camera. GraaFix eSports, world-class design from the real world to virtual. Visit GraaFixeSports.com.
Chris Fowler has the butt kicker on board. What you see and what you hear is what you feel. For more information, visit thebuttkicker.com.
Chris Stouffer will have the Carnox on board. Carnox, makers of the finest esports gaming chairs. We've got your back. Visit Carnox.com.
And the wonderful thing about the iRacing service is we get onboard looks with every single car in this field, in addition to the wonderful camera pack designed custom for us by our own Tyler Maxon, TCR driver in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge paddock as well. But now, we're about to get underway, the first of 3 Triple Crown races here in the Lionheart Speedway Series, 300 miles on the agenda from the virtual Homestead Miami Speedway. No double points on the line, but this will be the start of a journey that everyone wants to come out on top on. The flag man has the green flag in his hands, and we get underway for the GraaFix eSports 300 presented by Minus 273. We complete lap number 1 out of 200 here, and they finally get side by side for the race lead. It's almost 3 wide with Chris Stouffer up on that outside line, but down his inside, here comes Mike Rigney and Justin. Oh, this is incredible. We thought dirty air would be a factor, but these cars are fanning out all across the track, and it's 2 wide, 3 deep for the race lead.
And it's similar to what we've seen in both the IndyCar and the Retro Series races early on. There's the chance for slingshots with the big amount of slipstream you can pick up down the straightaways, but you need to be able to set yourself up to make the pass down the straightaways. That's the difficult part. Already you see several drivers trying different lines. Newsom trying the top, Stouffer's trying the middle, and for the race lead, DeGroot's trying the middle to top on the seam.
DeGroot's, oh, he's switching to the over-under now. He's trying to get into the race lead. Second ever race in the Lionheart Speedway Series. He challenges Paul Sitter, Tyler Graff, and up into the race lead is the motorsports.com rider. But watch for the slingshot here. It's all about the draft. It's all about momentum. And Graff back down the inside. I don't think we'll see too much fighting in the early stages here, Justin. This is effectively the swap draft. We see it in Indy a lot of the time as well. I think these drivers will be very content to ride around like this and not fight too hard over the race lead.
That's actually a great point, because in some tracks you can use that to break away from the rest of the pack, be able to draft your way behind somebody, get the run, then you swap positions back and forth. But it's still too very early on to try and break that away, especially with everyone trying to battle on top of one another. You can see just how much they're trying to fan right now out around this racetrack. And by the way, one of the drivers who started towards the mid-pack, Jason Galvin, he's already joined this fight. He's already in the top 10.
And you saw them go 3 wide for a second there. They just about made it out safely. Galvin up into the top 10. 6 positions already gained on the day. I have a feeling, Justin, he'll be one to watch as he goes down to the inside. Look at this train of cars. There's absolutely nowhere to go if you want clean air. And at the end of the day, we've got a race now where it doesn't appear as though the race leader can really break away. So 200 laps. This is going to be a very dynamic race. And it's going to be one that these drivers have to keep on the edge of their seats. They can't afford to make any mistakes with speeds, like you said, in excess of 200 miles an hour.
Speaking of the race lead, Mike Rigney wants to try and lead this race. For Rigney, been looking really interesting so far. We talked about him on that outside line before. He's trying to utilize that middle line and try and get a run off the corner exits. Graff, meanwhile, is trying to fight side by side with Chris Stouffer with the GraaFix eSports on cam, starting to really struggle a little bit now in these early portions of this race.
That's the trouble sometimes when you're on pole position, Justin. If you're comfortable in clean air and you're not so comfortable once you fall into the pack. He's now got 3 cars in front of him, tucks into line behind Indiana's own Chris Stouffer. That will not aid his charge to get back to the front. Look at this, though, side by side, Charles Teed. I believe that's Craig Forsyth with Chris Fowler lurking in the background. And there you've got the Canadian Andrew Kinsella. He's one to watch for, Justin. He's up 2 positions so far, but like I said, he won on debut in the Lionheart Racing Series many moons ago. And he's trying to become the only driver to win 3 of these races at the Homestead Miami Speedway.
You can see very smooth in the steering inputs right there, just trying to turn it and cut it underneath the inside of Chris Fowler. But someone I think that can definitely make his way up to the front. It's just going to take some time here. It just seems though the top line in 3 and 4 is the way to go at the very least if you want to try and make these moves. Maybe set it up down the back straightaway at least. With how this track is configured, keep in mind that's essentially downhill through turns 3 and 4, uphill in turns 1 and 2. It's a little bit higher in 1 and 2 because it was made that way so spectators could see from the grandstands to the back straightaway.
I must say, though, this is an interesting track for IndyCar. Shame that it doesn't come here anymore. Here comes Newsom, though, looking for a third victory in a row down the inside of the pole sitter. And Tyler Graaff offering no fight at all. I wonder, Justin, if fuel saving is already the name of the game. We talked about it before we came on air, but the fuel stint is about 46, 47 laps, which means if we go green, you are required to do a splash and dash at the end of this race. Obviously, we don't necessarily expect for it to go green. Cautions will always play their part in races like these, but it does mean that you have to be on the tip of your toes, ready to respond if the caution flies.
Yeah, we're already inside that first projected window, in fact, but here's the thing. It's going to be tight, as you talked about. We were talking about the projections for today's race. Could be within 2 laps drivers have to save throughout some of these runs. And if you're in a pack like this, there is the chance you can save a little bit to be able to get to those numbers. If you're out front, though, and try to go really full throttle, then it's going to be really more difficult. Keep in mind, some of these races so far this season have come down to fuel mileage and the importance of saving fuel for the closing stages.
Matt Taylor with the HyperX on board gets a bit blocked there as Vern Hawkins comes up into his line. Charles Teed will try and sweep down the inside, almost contact with Taylor through the outside wall. And this is the momentum, this is the run. Taylor should get past Teed, but Teed is not done defending here. Watch for the slide job, Justin. We talked about this before. Teed tries to get into line, gets very, very loose, and Matt Taylor says thank you very much. He's up into the top 10.
And it's going to be something where if you try and do the slide job, you need to be precise on it, especially clear by on corner apex, and do it to where you won't cause an incident with the car behind you. So you need to find that true timing if you want to try and fully succeed on that. But again, that aero wash is really starting to spread these cars apart, especially among the top drivers. In this pack, yes, things are getting stuck together because of these drivers getting held up together with this dirty air. Compared that to the top 4, though, they've already pulled away by more than a second from the pack.
Yeah, let's go check in out front. There you can see Nick de Groot leading in only a second Lionheart Speedway Series race. Hasn't enjoyed, I think, the Retro Series as much as he would have wanted. It's been a bit more chaotic than I think he was hoping for, but this is the type of action that he is looking for. Now leads, like you say, 6/10 almost. The gap back to Mike Rigney. Both of these cars making up positions at the start. Christopher in 3rd position. No gain from the race lead, but race start, excuse me. But Alexis Newsom up 2 on the day, and then we talked about this in the pre-show, Justin. The pole sitter has never won this race before, and unfortunately for Tyler Graaff, it's trending in that same direction.
He's actually losing about a 10th a lap to the top 4 at the moment, who are all pulling each other away from the rest of the pack, it appears, at the very least. So this is the tough part, again, on being that lead car. You don't get that benefit down the straightaways to be able to draft up to the back end of somebody. It's a couple miles an hour difference between him and Mark Cohn, for example, who is reeling in quickly and trying to build up a ramp from that top line.
I've seen on a number of occasions cars really flirting with disaster on that outside wall. I'm not so sure I'd feel so confident. Look at Jason Galvin. You don't get the greatest indication from here, but maybe watch on board with Galvin coming into turn 3, Justin. And up in 6th gear, sees Cohn in front of him, feeding some dirty air. So he goes even higher, and watch just how close to the outside wall he's going to get. Not so close here. Matt Taylor, one car that I have been seeing flirting with the outside wall, not so close this time around, but James Grahula tucks onto the inside of Charles Teed and should scoop his way back up into the top 10. Talking of some poor qualifiers, Justin, here comes Barrett Rolfe, up 7 on the day so far, and in the Hornet's Nest, top 20, really nowhere for him to go right now.
Yeah, it just seems like he's boxed in right now. He's tried the bottom line, he's tried the top line throughout all this. It's just been where he's not in the preferred groove whenever it's taken the better momentum at this point. But you see he's running that white line too to try and take the shortest distance around. It's a line you can make work here at this racetrack. It just takes a lot of precision because a couple drivers in some of the practice starts before tonight's qualifying clipped that apron and caused trouble in said practices. So you need to be careful when you get down to the very bottom underneath that first seam.
gap out front up to a full second now. So what you're seeing is dirty air, such a factor out front that it's enabling cars to scamper away, but in the pack further behind, once it accumulates and just continues to exponentially disturb the air that the drivers have to work through, it's meaning that you can find runs. Barrett Rolfe down the inside, up into the top 20 now if he can get past Jess Seong, but Seong is not going to make this one easy. Hacker runs the middle line, opens the door for Rolfe to try and make this one work, and good momentum up then into the top 20. Further up, Andrew Kinsella has worked his way up into the top 12 once more. But you are starting to see, Justin, increasing gaps starting to form. Of course, Tyler Graaff is a bit of a cork in the bottle back in 5th, but even then, James Krahula in 9th, 1 second separated from Craig Forsyth in front.
And this is just starting to get where some of the talent level and some of the grip levels come into play, because it's a separation of about a 10th from those top 4's times compared to what the rest of the field is currently running. Just that comfortability when it comes to this racetrack. But I think if Krahula can break through and away from the toe, there's a chance he can try to claw his way back up to where Forsyth and company are. Keep in mind that there are some scraps starting to build up towards the front here. Take, for example, Christopher, who's held on to 3rd much of this race. Newsom wants that spot, but you can see just how much the air wash is pushing Newsom up the track.
Stouffer is now, give or take, a full second behind Rigney in 2nd, so this is enabling Newsom, I think, to build runs and try and find different lines. Stouffer will slide up, feed the dirty air. Newsom will take the draft down the back straightaway, though, and say thank you very much. Let's see what we can do in this situation. They are now falling off the back of De Groot lap by lap. Last time around, it was a full 10th of a second that De Groot managed to pull out on 2nd place Mike Rigney. As here comes Jason Galvin around the outside with one of his teammates, Mark Cohn in the Pink Panther. Cohn down into 7th, Galvin up into 6th. 9 positions gained on the day. And in a race, Justin, where there are a lot of people that I think are contenders for the biggest movers, Jason Galvin still has 6 positions to go, and I would not count out a charge for victory here today.
Especially if strategy and cautions come into play, absolutely. He's definitely on it. He's one of the quickest cars on the racetrack. Looking at the averages, too, is inside the top 5 grouping for that over the past 10 laps. But in other news, it's 3 wide in the heart of the pack.
Joe Branch, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, and AJ Musselman trying to hang on the outside and be as strong as he can, but I don't think the run that he was getting was enabling him. They still are 3 wide. It's been an entire lap almost that we've seen them. I wonder how much longer they've been juking this out. Nunez holds on. It's not been the easiest start to Nunez's Lionheart career, but he is looking to try and build some momentum up, not just in this championship, but in the IndyCar on Wednesdays as well. Joe Branch, by the way, Justin, down 11 positions on the day. A driver that's worked his way into the top 10 in the championship. This is not the type of run he needs in our first Triple Crown event.
Yeah, it's not been a pretty one so far. Just seems to be caught up in the wrong lines each time and just continues to lose momentum on the corner exits we just seen right there. Let's put him up quickly up for a grasp from Jim Brooks. Right now, he's only running 199 to 200 miles an hour in the corners. But keep in mind as well, Arjuna, Joe Branch has been known for taking strategy gambles and calls before to try and stretch it on gas. You have to wonder if he's thinking about those numbers we talked about and planning things out that way. By the way, as well, we talked about Krahula being able to catch up to cars in front with straight line speed with the draft. He's done that and now has a chance to attack Craig Forsyth.
And these guys now only find themselves, give or take, 7 seconds off the race leader. So while De Groot has kind of gapped the top 3, you are starting to still see these groups start to build momentum up, and at least relative to some of their other competitors, catch the pack. Cohn has been a bit slower than the likes of Krahula, and now Krahula tries to find a way around Forsyth, ducking down to the inside in through turn 3. I think that bright yellow machine is going to try and slide up the track, but Forsyth is having none of this, and this is the great thing about Homestead. You can run multiple lines, Justin, and it does mean that further back in the pack, you have this incredible type of racing.
As a driver, this is one of my favorite tracks because of that ability to utilize multiple lines, whether it's the top to be able to get a run off the corner, whether it's the bottom line to be able to run the shortest distance around and try and complete some passes. It brings exciting racing in multiple different types of cars, including in IndyCar action, as we've seen in the Dallara DW12. And we can see those multiple groups definitely coming into play for some of these drivers, including Kinsella, who seems to be able to utilize that bottom and just weeble-wobbled his way to the top.
Weeble-wobbled. I like that, Justin. You saw just, he was so confident. He threw that car down to the inside, trusted in the Lords of Downforce, and it somehow worked for him all over the back now of the cars in front and up into the top 10. This is the type of momentum you need, and Matt Taylor might try and follow him around the outside. And sometimes at a track like this, Justin, as well, it's all about trains. You saw Kinsella go to the outside. Taylor unable to follow, but especially in the NASCARs where you've seen a lot of cars just rim riding on the outside wall, you really can just build up momentum and make it difficult for cars on the inside to come back up into the line.
Yeah, it can be difficult, especially in a stock car in particular, to try and get yourself jumping forward on the line. And that's where some frustration can come into play. But when it comes to these types of trains, if one driver is able to leap on forward, it likely opens up the next part of the train for a driver to be able to poke on through. And then the next one, and then the next one. It's just the trend of you force someone to lose momentum by taking away their preferred line or being able to make a pass. You can in turn see them go backwards and put them into a peculiar or an uncomfortable position.
Riding off the rearward from Craig Forsyth, who has James Krahula just searching for the clean air all the way to the outside in the Sim Racing Merch eSports machine, and Krahula in the 4, still side by side with Andrew Kinsella, who's working and challenging to try and make his way up to close the gap to Jason Galvin. They started quite close to one another, but Galvin has been able to work his way up through the field. Not been so easy for Kinsella so far, but seems to be coming to him right now. Gap between first and second, 1.1. Gap between second and third is 1.3 as yellow flag is out for the first time. Chris Fowler seems to have been caught up in this one. Oh, Vern Hawkins as well. As Chris Fowler back down onto pit road, Justin, we are under caution for the first time today.
And it might happen in front of Fowler. For what happened there is Vern Hawkins got some help from Ken Hacker. Fowler got the very worst of it, though. Nowhere for him to go. Spins hard into the outside wall.
And we'll have to take a couple more looks at this one, I think, Justin. That's an unfortunate one. And I think, like you say, it was just not enough space being left between the two cars. Now let's see if we can grab it. Ken Hacker looking to the inside. Maybe we need an onboard look there with Chris Fowler, Justin. Not sure, actually, if two kind of comes down into one. Super slow-mo, talk us through it.
And it's going to be tight contact just right there with the left rear from the 24. As a bit 50-50 there, but then Fowler tries to avoid it, nowhere to go with the quick response. Ends up actually getting clipped, I think, by one or two more cars as he slides down the racetrack. That's why Fowler's car absolutely demolished, as this opens up the pit window, and Krahula appears to stay out at least for maybe the points.
Interesting to try and lead the race just for the point at this stage, because we are not far away from the pit window, so Krahula is going to cycle all the way back to the tail end of the field, as pit road exceptionally busy. All but one car down on the lane. All but two cars. Matt Houston seems to have stayed out there as well. Cars go up on the jacks, though. Fresh set. Ooh, Tyler Groff missed his box. He had to back up. That might compromise his time in the pit road. A race off of the pit lane, though. Who wins it between Nick DeGroot? Chris Stouffer. It was side by side between them. DeGroot holds on, but Chris Stouffer has jumped Mike Rigney then in pit lane, Justin.
That's going to be critical for Stouffer to be able to try and battle for this race lead. He's looked fairly quick. It's just that clean air once you get to lap 15 of a run is so critical. Should be worth noting that Matt Houston did stay out with James Krahula here, and Krahula is electing to come in. Houston is not here in the 66, though.
Very, very interesting. Not sure why. Maybe he's trying to lead the lap, Justin, as well. Get the point, and then cycle back down on pit road the next time around.
That's at least thought process here at this point, because I don't know if it'd make the biggest sense to try and strategize on this point of the race, because you'd have to come in a couple laps anyway.
So there's Krahula down on the road. Houston does lead At least for now, working lap 43 out of 200. First caution on the day, Justin. And like we were talking about in the event details, most to fewest cautions, it's a relatively small range of 3 to 6. We managed to get almost a third of the way through this one. Some crazy action, lots of dirty air. It now does set up the next 40 laps, I think, to be very crucial, though. Because if we can go green for the next 40 laps, get a green flag pit stop as well, it really changes the game.
We're doing some quick math here on this, and the next laps projected based on the fuel projections for this race is about lap 89, for example. So, in essence, this possibly moves the whole entire fuel window, Arjuna, back 10 laps and may be in a situation where drivers may have to take an extra stop, possibly. It's going to be a thought process here where there's a lot of moving parts, and the strategists are going to be really having to be on their tippy toes to figure out, okay, can we make this work? Do we have to save? Because essentially this just made things a lot more interesting in terms of how the pit stops are going to be laid out for this entire rest of the way.
Houston down onto pit road, so there you go. Leading a lap gets him a solitary bonus point. And now he will drop then to the tail end, along with James Grahula, who did the same thing. Lights off on the pace car, Justin. We'll be back to green. It's de Groot, Stouffer, Rigney, Newsom, and Galvin, the top 5 as it stands. Barrett Rolfe up 15 positions into 13th. Eric Schaus as well up 15 on the day into 18th. I would not be surprised if on this next chaotic restart they find a number of more positions. But at the same time, Justin, I do think that we are now in the danger zone where, I'm knocking on wood, cautions breed cautions. We need to make sure that these drivers stay as clean as they were in the opening 40 laps.
I think we may see some bold moves here as a result here with this opportunity, because a lot of the drivers are starting to spread apart, and it was going to be interesting if things played out green to the first pit stop window. But now, essentially, you're trying to knock on the door of some of these positions. This is your best opportunity to gain positions here in these first 10, 15 laps of this run. It's going to be tough to hold on to the race lead, though, as we've seen early on.
So first caution of the day, a 300-mile affair, 200 laps, about a quarter of the way in. First caution, green flag waves once more in the GraaFix eSports 300, presented by -273. Great launch for Nick de Groot, who leads the field in only his second Lionheart Speedway's race. He's been in the Lionheart competition bracket for just under a couple of weeks. A side-by-side Rigney and Newsom, as Rigney's going to fall out of the podium positions. If Newsom can find this momentum, Justin, find the over-under and get up into third.
Able to pull some momentum from the cars in front as Rigney's trying to squeeze Newsom up the track a little bit, side-by-side for the race to lead up the road, though.
They're working side-by-side for both of them. Stouffer all the way up on the outside, trying to get into the race lead for the first time in this season. And around the outside of Nick de Groot, we thought these restarts would be crazy and chaotic, and I think they're being pretty crazy in the background as well. There you see 3 wide as Galvin tries to find some purchase on the outside to really rip down this main straightaway. Behind him is teammate Tyler Groff as well. Side-by-side once more for the race lead, Justin. These restarts really are living up to the billing.
As to be expected, and this is going to be very critical. If you can get the clean air by about lap 15, there's a chance that buffer builds up once more. And Stouffer's driving like it, just pushed too hard up the racetrack, though, setting up the run for de Groot.
You can see they are starting to break away from the pack behind. There is separation between 10th and 11th. That's Matt Taylor and Ken Hacker. 1.5 seconds as it stands. There you see Alexis Newsom is into the podium positions as side-by-side. Stouffer and de Groot continue to do a little bit of swap drafting, but now the game is, when do you pop out at the right moment to block the run? Does Stouffer do it now? No. So he clearly thinks here, Justin, the tires have enough grip to do this dance for another couple of laps, and then he'll try and position himself at the right time to be at the front of this field as we go to single file action.
That's what it looks like, absolutely. It's just a matter of, can he get that complete in the right time? Because the swap draft has been able to build them up at least 3/10 or so from the rest of the pack. It also helps, too, that they're fighting aggressively from 4 on back and are not swap drafting. They're just straight up fighting 2 to 3 wide at this moment, and that's holding them up by a couple tenths a lap.
You can see, I mean, there's basically 3 Yeah, I think you can say 3 packs that are forming at this point in time. So something to just keep an eye on, especially when it comes to the later cautions that we get, Justin, because if we get this kind of separation, it enables, I think, some of these cars that have kept this track position out front to really dominate this race. As there goes de Groot back with the slide job. Now here comes Stouffer back down the inside. I don't know when the tires start to feel bad enough, but I have to start thinking as we work lap 9 of this stint so far. We're not far away, and single file is going to start coming as the top 3 now have separated themselves from Jason Galvin on back.
And that's again with the swap drafting and them all working together for the most part as the caution waves.
And it's Vern Hawkins again. Oh, what's happened to Hawkins? Back down onto pit road. And quick fire cautions. Cautions do breed cautions. It's not just something that gets said for no reason. Ooh. Solo car incident hard into the inside wall. And watch here. Ooh. As Matt Houston almost makes contact with Vern Hawkins. One more look at this one, Justin. Take a look at the aerial look first, and then we'll get the onboard from the 66.
Just seemed to lose the back end throughout the corner exit, and when he tried to correct it, slammed the wall. What an avoidance, though, from Houston, as he had to pick a line and quickly choose. Do I have to go high or low? He chose right and went low, and now this just made fuel and the strategy extremely interesting, Arjuna, because this does put us inside that fuel projection to make it on a 3-stopper in this race.
So who's coming down onto the pit road? Looks like at least Newsom might be staying out there. And this will be split. I see a pink and black car. That would indicate Mark Cohn is staying out there as well. Indeed, yes. Newsom, Galvin, Cohn, Rigney, Craig Forsyth, Tony Schowen, and then Paul Jenkins. They're the only cars that appear to be staying out there, Justin. This is an interesting call, especially from those cars that were out front that didn't necessarily need track position. For some of those other cars, track position here, that will be very, very vital.
Extremely vital, actually, at this point, to be able to get the positioning to try and defend at the very least. We've seen how important clean air has been, but at the same time, you have to think all these drivers who stayed out are banking for a caution flag in about 30 laps or so. That'll equalize them back out, or by the time we get to the next projected window around lap 94-ish. So they need this run to play out perfectly for them. They can't afford a caution in about a couple laps or so, or about 10, or even 15. That puts them back marked into the pack once more. They need this race to have a caution flag around that lap 94 point for this to work out, in my opinion.
Doesn't look like anyone's coming down this subsequent time around. Left side of the screen, you can see the cars that stayed out. 11 in total. Led, of course, by two-time race winner this season, Newsom. Galvin and Cohn complete the current podium positions. People taking this opportunity to find some track position include Ken Hacker up 18 on the day, Tony Schowen up 21, Michael Hagstrom 23, along with Jim Brooks 24. So, and there's where the track position gains are coming in. Question will be, how worn are these tires? Because they're only about 10 laps into the run, give or take, Justin, when this caution flew. So they may not be as scrubbed as we may be thinking up here in the booth, but by no means are they going to be, a fresh set of Firestone rubber. They will start to feel the pain much earlier than the other competitors.
Yeah, especially towards the end of the run, but even then I was noticing the times with Nick de Groot in the clean air specifically was about a 1/10 of a second off or so by the time he reached lap 40, around the time of the first caution flag. So I don't think it's a concern if you're in the clean air. If you're in the traffic, that's where the tire wear really kicks in 2, 3, 4/10 of fall off, where you're trying to make sure you don't push up the racetrack. So this is where, if you're, say, Ken Hacker or Tony Schowen or Paul Jenkins, you need to find your way to a clean air pocket and quickly if you want to try and keep the track position without falling like a stone, as it looks like one driver did duck down the pit lane, the 61 Hagstrom.
Yeah, not sure why. Just wonder maybe didn't like the number of cars that were staying out in front of him, as we see caution lights go off indicating we will be back to green the next time around. Let's take a quick look, by the way, at our Sim Experience driver profile. It is Ken Hacker in the 24 car, rookie in the DW12, so only 3 starts to speak of, but very impressive last time out at Milwaukee. Played the strategy right. Hasn't quite managed to get that podium just yet, but could be on the cards. He's already used strategy in this race to work his way up into the top 5. He'll be lining up in 4th as we get back underway here from Homestead, Miami. 200 laps, 2 cautions, then in quick succession. And now we have a split strategy in effect. Alexis Newsom leads, looking for her 3rd victory in a row in the Lionheart Speedway Series. But with older tires, what can she do to fend off the challenge from the likes of Nick de Groot, Christopher, and Mike Rigney? As the pace car down onto the safety of pit road once more, Barney the flagman has the green flag in his hands. A very poor jump, it appears, there from Charles Teed as they come across the line already side by side. That's not always what you want to see, Justin, because you can get an automatic black flag as Alex Guyon and Paul Jenkins get on down his inside.
I think Tony Shelton actually timed it up and got to the outside of Charles Teed, and that's what boxed them all in there. That's going to be interesting to try and look back at for the 31 machine with how tight it was in that decision there to be able to shoot up the outside.
Race lead, though. Here comes Newsom. Here comes Galvin. Here comes Cohn as they all duke it out. 3 cars now trying to break away from second place in the championship. Tony Shelton back down in towards turn 3 at side by side with Jason Galvin, who was very, very rapid in a couple of the races in the DW12 so far. And Newsom back down to the inside. Now we'll get an indication of what swap drafting looks like on 10-lap old tires as Mark Cohn peeks to the outside as well here, Justin.
They can only do this, I think, for a couple laps based on what we've seen so far in this race. And at this part, I think at this point you can see Mark Cohn wanting to maybe shuffle Newsom out, try and work with Jason Galvin. They have experience working together, but Newsom is not going to give this up without a fight. We've seen how quick Newsom is. A bit of a later arc that time, in fact, to take the race lead back.
Almost contact. I think spooked Galvin very slightly as Hagstrom back down onto pit road. Not sure exactly what's happened there as Galvin peeks his nose back down to the inside as you see, oh, look at this. 2 wide, 3 deep. Kinsella in the middle of the pack there. It's that 16th position. Look at this aerial look. He's got Rigney and Guyon in front of him. George Anzaldo, the series organizer, behind. There's Barrett Rolfe, who unfortunately, Justin, has lost out slightly as here he comes down to the inside, trying to make it 3 wide to get up into the top 15.
Only got to about 13th position before the last caution flag or so, or the caution flags, I should rather say, with some of the strategy. So you can tell he's got to be a bit frustrated knowing he's moving forward. He's got the pace. It's just a matter of getting through all these cars to be able to show that pace in clean space, and that's not quite happened yet with how thick the traffic has been in the heart of the field around the teams.
So that's 2 wide, 4 deep, as Rigney is now going to get passed by Anzaldo. There goes Matt Taylor as well. It doesn't look like you want to be on that inside line at this point in time. But Rolfe will look to the outside. That's what I was expecting. Kinsella will try and slide up now into the path of Van de Sant. Instead, no, he slides down on the inside. That's going to hurt him, Justin. Here comes Van de Sant. He'll get up into the 19th position. Anzaldo very loose in front, 3 wide. Rolfe around the outside. Anzaldo down into 18th position.
Near contact, I believe, with Alex Guyon caused that with Anzaldo having to get out of the gas. That could have been disastrous. But a terrific save and a terrific moment for those drivers to be heads up in that situation. By the way, the race leaders, it's now a 4, make it about 6 or 7 car fight. Mark Cohn, going to let by Tony Schoen, possibly no, wants to try and fight for 2nd or 3rd while they fight for the race lead in front still.
So Galvin and Newsom continue to swap it out. Hacker has managed to get past Cohn as well. Jenkins managed to do it down the inside, not just yet, but the crucial part here, there's Nick de Groot. He's worked his way through the traffic in a very, very aggressive fashion. Craig Forsyth, Justin, is trying to follow him through. Christopher, unfortunately, though, finds himself down in 13th position. That restart has not worked out in the favor of the 13 machine.
Never got the clean air he was looking for, and it's all put him into a tough situation where he's also not been able to utilize that top line down the front straightaway as we've seen the momentum play out. It seems early on you can get the bottom to work if you carry enough speed, but you need to be able to clear yourself down the straightaway down the back to be able to then utilize the momentum properly for 3 and 4. It's just that tough balance that's coming into play for a couple of these drivers who were front runners early on, who are now all boxed in the heart of the pack.
And you want to talk about momentum swings, Justin. Look at Kinsella, for example, at one point, up in the top 10, now down in 22nd position, and just does not look comfortable with the car. And he's got experience, won on debut at this track all those years ago in this DW12, built the setup as well, but it just goes to show that you can make that small mistake, find the wrong line, and it just puts you in a position that you really can't defend.
It can absolutely, as speaking of drivers trying to defend a little bit, Tony Schowen trying to defend with Ken Hacker and starting to play the different lines now. And this is right where that dirty air was expected to really kick in and cause some problems for some of these drivers. Make it difficult for them to go that back and forth. Now, they're near dead even with one air and having to spread apart on different lines, and they're starting to really wash up. This is going to be interesting how Nick DeGroot in turn is going to be, since he's also still caught up in this dirty air, but that fall-off period won't come in for another couple laps.
Oh, look how close to the outside wall. When I was jumping around on various onboards earlier, Justin, that's what I was trying to show. That's how committed these drivers are. Down to the inside of Charles Teed goes DeGroot, and it gets that one done rather easily. He will get the drop that will help him pull down this back straightaway. Teed actually managed to fight that one back, but on the fresher tires, that's the kind of thing that you need to do right now to make sure you can take advantage of the fresh rubber.
Absolutely at this point, and just a matter of can he get past some of these drivers and get some clean space to be able to keep up with the front runners. They aren't breaking away like they were before with the older tires here, and that's the critical part. As you can see, Galvin's preferring the top line to get some clean space. Newsom's able to run wherever she wants to run. Alexa's able to run middle to top for the corner apex, then exit.
It is absolute insanity here from the virtual Homestead Miami Speedway. Don't go anywhere. We're going to step aside here live on RaceSpottv and ESTV. We'll be right back with continued coverage here live from the virtual Homestead Miami.
Wreck avoidances.
Stay low. He's high, stay low.
Daring passes.
Oh, you're going to get it.
Silly jumps.
Oh my god, a drive-through.
The thrill of victory.
They're against the wall. Good win, Mark. Stay low.
And the occasional mishap.
My sim crashed.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
Hello and welcome back to RaceSpottv and continued coverage here in round 4 of the Lionheart Speedway Series, the GraaFix eSports 300, presented by -273. My name is Arjuna Kankipati. Alongside in the commentary booth is Justin Prince. 2 cautions on the day, working lap 79 out of 200, Justin. In our first Triple Crown event of the year, it's been exciting. Aero Wash is very much the story of the race so far.
It's been very critical for how drivers have been taking these lines, and it's been very big for what time some of these drivers have been turning because of how much they have to try and be careful on the throttle to wheel themselves through the dirty air. It's caused some big separations to now once again in some of these packs, but the best drivers are the ones who are able to overcome it and try and battle their way through some of the aero wash. One of the best examples is Barrett Rolfe, but keep in mind that clean air has also allowed Newsom to pull away by 1.2 seconds now with 120 laps to go.
And in this portion of the race, Justin, we do have, some slight split strategies between, I'd say, the top 5 now, and then Nick de Groot is the first of the cars that came down in that second caution that we had. As you see Hacker trying to look to the inside of Galvin. What we are seeing on this second green flag run, if you will, is that whereas in the first run, the top 10 kind of got quite strung out. From Galvin on back, there's not too much separation, and as we head into the green flag pit window, which is only about 10 laps away for the first 5 cars or so, that's going to be a factor that will really influence how they cycle out into the lap traffic.
As well as how many stops they'll have to potentially take. It's going to be intriguing how it all plays out for those competitors. And there's just those some of the gambles you have to take, right, when you try and battle for a race, when you're hoping for caution flags. We've talked about how big track position has been. It's just that difficult balance that comes into play. By the way, Matt Taylor, one of the drivers, trying to gain some of these positions. You can see trying to utilize the different lines. It's been difficult once we get to this point, though, once the tires really work their way in and heat themselves up to complete the pass as contact.
Andrew Kinsella does a fantastic job to avoid that one on a guest appearance in the series, but that is a big one. Craig Forsyth involved, Mike Rigney as well, who was running up in the podium positions. We've got our third caution on the day. Straight then to the RaceSpottv replay machine, Justin, and let's see exactly what that was. Looked like potentially just a bit of that aero wash coming into effect.
It looked like it on the first glance. A bit of a bobble scene there initially, too, from the 8 machine of Taylor as he tried to go and make the pass on the very bottom of the racetrack. He had a big burst of speed down that straightaway. I think tried to send it in. Actually clipped the apron. He clipped the apron, Arjuna, and that's what sent him up.
And we'll spool a couple more looks at this one. I tell you what, Justin, I think there's a few different storylines to take a look at. First is Kinsella's viewpoint here. And take a look at this as Taylor, like you said, up the track, just about manages to avoid getting involved. And then the second part that I think we want to take a look at is what happens to Nunez here.
You can see him trying to choose the top, and he gets collected as that's similar to what we talked about earlier with the second caution of the race when Vern Hawkins, the third, went around. You have to commit to a certain line as a driver, and he committed to the top. Just that one little bit of the direction for Forsyth is enough to completely demolish his car.
Check this out as well. Series organizers George Ansaldo down on the apron. Oh, it's contact with one of the Dark Horse Motorsports cars. I couldn't pick out which one it was. I wonder if there's going to be any sort of lingering damage then on the number 6. Back to live pictures, and like I expected, pit road, Justin, very, very busy. And let's see who wins the race off. It is going to be Newsom, Galvin, Schowen. And the crucial thing is here, the cars who didn't come down the last time around, Justin, they have benefited the most from this caution.
I was about to say, this is the caution flag that they were kind of looking for. Not exactly the lap, I think, that they were targeting, but it's also now a caution flag that really mixes things up in the running order. Nick de Groot was the furthest up overall after all the pit stops in terms of the drivers who pit under the second caution flag. So he's got decent track position, but for everyone else, this is going to be an intriguing back and forth now as a result of said caution flag to see how things play out for them.
And so if I'm doing my victim calculations so far in that crash, Justin, 3 cars, Rigney, Forsyth, I think you can only count Nunez as somewhat of a participant. Inzaldo, I think, will have gotten away with one there. In total, though, we talk about the number of cars that have been mixed up in this. We started with 34, relatively small field by the Speedway Series numbers. Third caution of the day, 3 cars involved in the first one, solo car incident in the second one, and now 3 more cars involved. Despite that, we've only got 5 retirements on the day, so that is a nice thing to see. Drivers still out there pounding around and trying to get some much-needed valuable points under their belts.
And only a couple drivers a lap down. Krahula 1 down, Hagstrom 2 laps down in this race so far. So they've been able to keep themselves at a relatively quick pace so far throughout this race. They've been at the pace in some cases in the heart of the pack as the race leaders. It's just been the difficult part of getting up there now. Have to say, this caution flag also benefits, I think, drivers like Barrett Rolfe potentially as well, who's up to 10th position, because that was around where he was or so in the last pit stop sequence. But we see Rolfe now take advantage and be able to leapfrog his way up into potentially the heart of the main pack.
He's up 18 positions on the day, and you might think he'd be the biggest mover, but no, that's Tony Schowen, who's up 24 positions on the day. And in a season where I think consistency is going to prove key, Schowen, so far, Justin, is really doing what he needs to. Consistently on the podium positions, consistently at the front, and eventually, you'd have to think he'll be rewarded by a race victory as well.
You have to think as well, he's definitely got the pace. It's just getting qualifying and the hot lap speed in. And that's always very difficult, because when talking to some of the best who are at the pro levels here on iRacing, they spend hours, Arjuna, just on qualifying alone because of that importance of track position, because it can be difficult to cut your way through the field. This is not just in stock car racing, but also in open wheel racing it comes into play, and we've seen that come into play throughout the series so far.
And again, when you have that same setup that's used across of the race and qualifying, it makes finding speed in qualifying a unique challenge, and one that definitely certain drivers seem to excel at. It's a race that never has been won from the pole, though, so Tyler Graf finds himself struggling in 17th now, but still half the race distance to go, working lap 88 at the line. It will be 89, lap 89 of this race, 300 miles in the virtual Homestead Miami. The first Triple Crown race from Homestead for the Lionheart team. Let's get back underway in the GraaFix eSports 300 presented by -273. Good launch at the front of your field, and you'll see it's only really Mark Cohn that's challenging Ken Hacker in the top 10 right now, Justin.
Interesting snake maneuver as well there for Newsom to try and break up a bit of the draft, as here comes some of the side-by-sides. Mark Cohn side-by-side as well. Nick DeGroot wanting to get back inside that top 3.
And that's important, to be able to slide up the track in front of Jenkins, halt his momentum as well. Now focus on the guys out front as Alexis Newsom, Jason Galvin, they swap once more for the race lead. And here comes Tony Schowen ripping the outside line, building his momentum up. Newsom tucks back down to the inside on board. And we'll jump with Tony Schowen. And you can see fresh tires, Justin. Even now, he's in the dirty air, having to lift very slightly. That's not helping his challenge at all.
Yeah, it seems at the very least, if you want to challenge for the race lead, for obvious reasons, you need to be inside the top 2, and that's, I think, just with the dirty air. I don't think you can pass 2 cars at once here, the scenario, but they're really starting to get slippy slidey down the straightaways, trying to really break up this toe in the draft to prevent the back and forth.
Yeah, Galvin has said, no thank you, I'd just like to lead this race without too much of an issue. Painting the white line now, goes back up to the outside. Forces Newsom to duck and dive, defends the middle now. This is interesting from Galvin. This is much racier, Justin. We're not even halfway into this 300-mile affair, excuse me, as Newsom thinks about going to the inside. To the outside she goes.
Almost forced up there with some of those moves there to allow Tony Schowen to try and take a peek now for second position right behind. And look at that, it's allowed everybody else back into the mix of things. Nick DeGroot and Paul Jenkins have stayed lined up astern as these cars have continued to fight.
And maybe now, Justin, if you're someone like DeGroot, you see this and you start fuel saving, you know that it's unlikely that you're going to be able to get to the front, at least without doing some kind of risky maneuver. think about the long game. We've been saying that strategy is always going to be thrown on its head. Newsom has won on fuel saves multiple times in the series already. You always have to be thinking about that possibility in these races.
Absolutely, and currently the projections show a potential two-stomper to about 20 laps to go is currently what the current projections possibly mark for when drivers would have to come in if it stays green. And that would be intriguing in of itself if that ends up coming into play because of the late stages and how much fuel drivers are going to put in. So going to be very critical that drivers think about that mark and try and put themselves in position at the same time to try and take away the checker flag by saving enough gas to get to that mark and then some.
You are seeing, by the way, a bit of separation forming. They're squabbling over the race lead, but side by side is Barrett Rolfe and Charles Teed on the edge of the top 10. And now 2.5 seconds adrift from the race leader. Canadian Andrew Kinsella nowhere to go. Wonder what he'll do. Ooh, back to the race lead. It's very close. And touch and go almost between Galvin and Newsom. I think at this point now, Justin, 10 laps into the stint, this is where if you're Tony Shaw and you start to think about what you can do as well and just find some momentum, because here comes Nick de Groot looking very menacing in your rear view mirrors.
Actually pulled away from Jenkins, and this is the line de Groot was trying to make work as the tires wore out. Utilize the bottom, go for the slide jump. And that slide was near perfect, able to clear on by for that pass. Those are the types of slides that drivers need to have a lot of experience in to properly clear on by without coming across the front wing of another car.
You can only do that as well when you trust the guys around you. Here comes Stouffer back down to the inside, finding his way into the podium positions once more. Jenkins around the outside, though. Lots of momentum, cleaner air. Holds on to the top 5 for now. Oh, the Muscle Man side by side with Matt Taylor. So Taylor has not suffered too much, Justin, with whatever contact he had there in that last caution. He's gotten very lucky, I'd have to think, as we jump on board with the HyperX on board. But halfway through this race, what do you think he can really do in this position? He's not had the easiest of days, but definitely a very strong driver here in the Lionheart Racing Series.
I think to get up there, you need to take some gambles and also get a bit of luck right now. For example, if you want to get by these 3 in front of your Matt Taylor, you're just hoping that you follow the train of momentum. Right now, he's actually using different gears as well to try and get the launch of the momentum and try and get to that top line and take this position away, for example, from Charles T. So stuff like that. Just trying to run your own race at this point. It's got to be the big focal point. Is a bit near contact as he trying to squeeze his way up the top.
I'll just say that is resolute defense from Charles Teed right now, because Matt Taylor has been getting the runs and Teed is not, I'm going to quote Fernando Alonso here, all the time you must leave the space, Justin. I don't think Teed necessarily left enough room given how much momentum Taylor was getting. Once more, oh, it's very, very close, and if you're Taylor, you're going to start getting pinched down, and some of the cars behind might try and take advantage.
Yeah, I think T doesn't realize he can get a little bit closer to the wall, possibly with the viewpoints, the various FOVs, and that's allowing Taylor to at least think about it. Eventually, this is going to force Taylor to make an aggressive move here, or that's the possibility. He's thought about it again, near contact. He's trying to send the message, I think, of, okay, you can go a little bit higher here, either that or move to the middle.
You make a great point, though, Justin. I mean, there's so many different setups that you can have on this iRacing service. You have your basic setups with, a Logitech G27, a single, maybe even like a 24-inch monitor that really does not leave you much field of view, is the magic term on the iRacing service, and indeed in all of sim racing. And then you've got the professional sim racing setups, VR, triple screens, etc., etc. It just makes your life that much easier as you see Kinsella, Teed, and Taylor squabbling over at the edge of the top 10. Taylor wants to get on past, but just cannot find a way to get around. Into the top 2 once more is Nick de Groot. Jason Galvin has started to scamper away here, Justin. Half a second is the gap between the 42 and the 89. And wow, 14 position gain for Galvin. He might have found this race lead at the perfect time for him.
Took the gamble on strategy, paid off for him to get the track position, and then it was the interesting battling where he didn't want to go back and forth and go with the swapped route. He wanted to keep the clean air and try to break up Newsom and try and force Newsom into some mistakes. In other words, force Newsom to not get the momentum for some of those positions. And that's now been very pivotal in this fight for the race lead. And Wayne Galvin has now pulled off it away by 0.7 of a second. It was an intriguing strategy, but it's a strategy that has worked out here to get that race lead and try and run away from all of these cars that are squabbling right behind.
And they're squabbling hard as well. Left side, let's show you the positions moved and gained as well. You can see they are finding alternate lines, just trying to build up the momentum. 14 gained for your race leader, Jason Galvin, but by no means the hard charger. That's Tony Showen at this point in time, up 23. And if he can get into the race lead, it would be 27 gained on the day. Shout-outs as well to the likes of Barrett Rolfe. We talked about the momentum he's been slowly building up in the opening couple of rounds of this championship, Justin. And I must say, for a newcomer to the Lionheart Series and to IndyCar racing as well, he has very much shown that he knows how to compete in a fixed setup competition, and he knows how to get the best out of the vehicle that he's got as well.
Ascari Autosport definitely has somebody that can definitely wheel in every single type of car. We talked about his experience in simulators over his career. He's someone that I think is going to be one of the main pillars of this program to raise them potentially up to the top levels. It's an organization for the past couple of years that has been on the rise in some premier events, and Barrett Rolfe is one of those drivers I think that can bring them to the promised land. Right now, the best finish so far is just 6th. He's had speed to win races before. It's just the matter in the series of that track position that we've talked about that he needs to find a way to get in these types of races. And as we've seen tonight, it's hard to get it unless you take a gamble to get up there.
Loving these battles, by the way, between that inside and the outside line. Hacker goes all the way to the inside of the apex, opens the door for the 33 to try and get underneath him in through turn 3, but of course momentum on the side of the 24, and Rolfe always washing up the track there. Hacker able to defend his position without too much discomfort here. Working lap 111 out of 200. They're side by side for 4th position very briefly as Paul Jenkins is starting to hold up the Adrenaline Motorsports duo here, Justin, and as Nick de Groot feels the pressure from Alexis Newsom behind, they're 1 second adrift of Jason Galvin as well. So we are starting to see what we saw on the first green flag run, and I do think they'll start extending more and more as we work our way through the stint. 26 laps done for all of these cars.
I agree with you, and the interesting thing is once pit stops cycle through, if we get to that point, is how drivers would cycle and break apart potentially then. And that's going to be the true telling sign of how some of the strategy can go. But for Jenkins, he's fallen off a cliff in the pace. Fallen off by a couple tenths now a lap. Seems to be really struggling both on the top and bottom lines. And now has allowed both these teammates to start squabbling and pull away from him and fairly quickly. Mark Cohn and Ken Hacker might be there and quick on the back end of Jenkins.
And that's where teamwork comes into effect. You saw it was Showen getting around the outside first. Stouffer was able to follow, and as they went down in through turn 1, Stouffer, I think maybe communicating with Showen, asking for the 31 to give some dirty air to Jenkins, who followed Showen, down to the inside. Oh, it's getting close between the teammates. Stouffer, I think, trying to get the swap on, but don't think it's going to be possible now, Justin. We are late into this run. They do have to deal with some dirty air from those cars in front. It's going to be difficult for them to close the gap to the likes of de Groot and Newsom, 2nd and 3rd.
It's going to be very difficult to get up there in turn, I think, even if you get a swap draft, because the tires, I think, at this point are too worn out. But look who's joining that fray. On top of Kinsella that we were looking in that fight, Matt Taylor continues to prefer that top groove and is now starting to pick off drivers one by one after struggling a little while ago to get by some of the drivers at the back of this train.
And, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, Justin, but, as Kinsella's trying to come up the track. Contact between Kinsella and the car behind. He holds on to it. That was Charles Teed in the Dark Horse Motorsports car. Kinsella, though, unfortunately loses control, and we are back under caution. It was getting close. It was getting feisty, and Justin, tempers started to flare. Looked like he thought he was potentially clear and came up into the front wing of somebody as
Had to lock it down to prevent hitting the inside wall, and that's where it looped it around, trying to prevent it from keeping it into the grass. See, right there, yeah, I left the opening on the outside, and it was what we were talking about with Taylor and Teed before, where the door was left open a couple times, and the door was left open a bit there, possibly, for the move in right there.
Onboard look with Schaus, who is, I think, teammates with Charles Teed. What are your thoughts on this one, Justin? I am first unsure because I haven't had too many looks at it. I've been taking some notes of the various cars that have had incidents, but you see here Kinsella's always coming up the track. Maybe we need to take a look at the onboard from Charles Teed and see what he was seeing from his perspective, because let's take one final look at this. Pit road is a very busy place.
And keep in mind, we were talking about Teed has been staying away from the wall a little bit. I'm wondering if Kinsella was expecting him to go a little bit higher, possibly, in that circumstance for the contact to the right rear. I don't know. It's a tough situation, let's put it that way, as a driver.
Well, interestingly, as you see lots of cars on pit road, the one that's not there, or one of them that's not there, is Andrew Kinsella. So he's decided to stay out there on the track. Tyler Graf into his box. It was unfortunately not had the best of days, but the race off of pit road, it's Galvin, De Groot, Newsom, and Stouffer. So no change there. Jenkins and Schowen, I think there was a change around there. Tony Schowen, 2 seconds slower than the rest of the competitors, Justin, in pit road.
Yeah, that is an interesting situation with Schowen, where if you don't get a good run into the box, it can cost you a ton of time, and pretty sure that might have been what happened there in part, possibly missing the situation, missing the box rather in that circumstance. Maybe, yeah, he had to back up is the reason why, just by a little bit.
Little mistakes can cost you, and now track position cycles back to Paul Jenkins. Fourth caution of the day, and we are approaching about the 70%, 60% marker of this race. It's been good, Justin. I've been enjoying this one, and the first Triple Crown of the season. I think there's a lot on the line for these drivers, and they know that, and they've really been putting it all out there.
They have, and now this race is going to be intriguing because it's a one-stopper to the end, essentially, to put it simply. You can split the race up in half. You can go to about inside 35 laps to go or so. And now it's going to be where some of those gambles early on could pay off. But you have to say there's one constant. Nick de Groot throughout this entire race. He's been up at the front all day long. He's been quick all day long. It's going to be interesting if he can get the lead back from Jason Galvin, though. We've seen how fast he was able to pull away in the first run.
I think the magic number here, Justin, is roughly 20, 25 laps in terms of that's when you want to be in the lead. You can't be swapping from that point forward. You can get aggressive like Galvin did. I don't think you benefit too much from doing so. So what we'll now see is the magic number might be 140 in terms of when you want to make sure you're out front. And then the same logic you kind of have to apply at the end of this race in that second, after that final pit stop that you're mentioning there. And you talk about Tony Schowen missing his pit box. You can't afford that sort of a mistake in the final cycle of the race. So there's a lot of pressure to execute the strategy right. And we've seen in this Lionheart Speedway Series before, strategy can take you to victory lane.
Newsom is the best example when it comes to a couple of the races so far this season, as well as the season opener, mind you, when strategy came into play for Dean Mall. So the strategy is definitely going to be a major benefactor for some of these drivers tonight. So it's just a matter of, will we get to that point where drivers duck their way into the lane, and can Galvin defend like he was before during the last run to be able to keep the race lead? That's going to be the tough part as well in all of this. Is Galvin was really working aggressively to try and break the slipstream of Newsom and company. And I wouldn't be surprised if Galvin does it again. And
watch out, Barrett Rolfe is up into 8th, Justin, and I mean, with the restarts going the way that they've had so far, you can never count him out from jumping up into the top 5 and looming large for the podium fight. pace car down onto the safety of pit lane to conclude this fourth caution of the day. Our green flag flies once more. Good jump from Jason Galvin as we launch ourselves down into turn one. Looks like Alexander Van der Sande might be one of the first cars poking his nose to the inside of Trevor Malone in the 69 car on this restart. But you get the good look there. No major moves. It's Mark Cohen that's trying to sling his way down the inside, Justin, of Tony Showen.
He's tried this a couple times throughout the race. The problem is right about here is where that momentum starts to usually die off. And that's where it becomes very difficult to try and make the pass. But look at how much they're fanning out towards the front in front of these cars. They make no contact there. Karn Showen there fanning out, and now to the lead is DeGroot.
So DeGroot cycles back to the front. This is where he spent the majority of the first run. Stouffer tries to find a line. Newsom tries to find a line. Galvin, lots of dirty air across the start-finish line. This is going to be crazy now, I think, on this run towards the end of this race, because all of these guys have speed, Justin. They all want to get to the HyperX victory lane. They all know this is the first of 3 of these Triple Crown races. Galvin back down to the inside. Victory will be important here tonight.
Especially in terms of momentum early on in the season, as well as the prestige of winning a race like this. But you can definitely tell they're racing like it's the last lap, and we still have 77 laps to go. Some of these drivers trying to line up and get to that top line, while DeGroot and company, they're busy continuing to scrap. Paul Jenkins, meanwhile, is looking good still in the short run.
So Stouffer now tucked up behind DeGroot. Galvin will sling down the inside, try and get the slide job. Over under, can DeGroot get it done? Galvin, look at how defensive he's going, but you can't defend a run like that. So DeGroot back down to the inside in the 89 machine. He'll cycle back to the race lead, and this cycle will continuing on, as it were. No, that's a big crash in the background. Showen, has he been involved in it? Paul Jenkins, the main contributor. Showen down on pit road, and that is a championship contender, Justin, getting caught out in a very big incident. We stay green, though, by some miracle.
I believe that was all underneath the yellow line, and the white line, rather, to be able to stay green on the apron. Unbelievable. And that's going to be definitely frustrating. Jenkins had a similar incident in that same corner, mind you, in some of the test restarts. But the race lead is still keeping up and keeping active, delving to the point. Here's what happened, though, with the trouble, I believe.
Let's take a look at this one. This is big. This is championship implications very early on. No double points here today, but still, watch this. Coming down through turn one, it's Showen behind Newsom, trying to find a line. Cohen and Rolfe behind. And it's going to be on the exit here of turn two. It's the 35 Jenkins that gets turned by Newsom from behind. And Showen goes for the ride of his lifetime there, Justin. Over and over and over. Into the infield he goes.
Often Arnia possibly as well, my goodness. But taking our look, they were fighting very hard, Jenkins and Newsom, where Newsom had been shuffled around with the dirty air. And I seen at the very edge of the live action that Jenkins tried to complete the slide job. Just about had it done, but on the checkup right there, Newsom just gets the very edge of the front wing, the back tires of Jenkins. And that, in turn, provides calamity.
Back to live pictures, and race control. We'll take a look at that one. And Chris Stouffer will now have to take the power slide adrenaline charge on his shoulders. Joe Branch as well has not enjoyed today. He's back in 18th position. What can the championship leaders in the team standings do? That was a big one. And when we talk about big ones, Justin, there's big ones and then there's big ones. And unfortunately for Tony Showen, that was big. Fortunately, I know for a fact he's not in VR. He's not going to be throwing up. It's just going to be disappointment and heartbreak in the championship picture.
I think so, especially since he was, again, one of 2 drivers to finish in the top 10 in each of the races so far. There's only one other candidate now in that mark, and Matt Taylor. He's definitely not going to be happy early on to have that trouble. But look at how they're fanning out for this lead still.
Oh,
What a checkup from Galvin.
And Stouffer almost bump drafting Galvin down the back straightaway. Barrett Rolfe down the inside, by the way, up 25 positions into the podium contention. Side by side, he works with Jason Galvin. I wonder if there's some damage, though, to the 42 machine, Justin. He's been flirting with the outside wall. He's been playing it very, very risky.
Nothing physical. As near contact a little bit there, a bit of a flicker there coming off Barrett Rolf. And what a drive from Rolf once again to get himself in this position. Started 10th on the restart, rather 8th I should say, and has now put himself in a position to fight for the race lead. This has been incredible, to say the very least, how he's been able to utilize that bottom in 1 and 2 to be able to make spots.
And you can see there's lots of action throughout the field as well. So this is really starting to intensify here in the Sunshine State. We are now under the nighttime lights. And track conditions, very, very cool. Reminder, you can follow along with live timing and scoring by heading over to racespot.wtf/Indy as they continue to just find the clean air. Jason Galvin now down to the 3rd position, but very much still in contention as Ken Hacker and Mark Cohn side by side, as Hacker actually tries to slide up the inside of Alexis Newsom. And now the question becomes for Newsom, Justin, what's the mental mindset there? Because the mistake, I don't know if you can necessarily apportion blame just yet with the limited views that we got of the incident, but the contact ultimately was from the front wing of Newsom's car, which often means when you have front to rear contact that you blame the car behind as 3 wide with Mark Cohn. Newsom needs to put that in the back of her mind. Focus on getting back to victory lane.
I was about to say that has to be what you focus on at this point. You can't afford to let it dwell on you and then think about, okay, what if I get into an error car? What if I get into this situation? You've got to stay laser focused on the prize at hand, the race lead. And look at that prize for the race lead. It is scrapping and hard. In other words, think about it later on. The apologies, think about the racing right now, because you've got a good shot with what's going on right here between these two.
Oh, yellow flag's out. I've heard a big crash in the background. Excuse my silence. Not.
Oh!
It's Newsom. It's Newsom who's being collected in this one. Big, big one. AJ Musselman, Mark Cohn, and Justin. Wow, we've had 5 cautions of the day, and they've all been big, big incidents.
Well, just as a safe focus on the race lead ends up getting in trouble. That's the biggest kibosh, I guess you can say, in a while. But to say what happened here, essentially, side-by-side for position, got contact from the left rear for Mark Cohn. Mark Cohn actually got a little bit loose and started to get a little bit squirrely as he tried to straighten things out and got into Newsom. Wow.
Let's look at this one. That was sickening, the speed of the rotation that Newsom's car just had. Here's going to be the contact. Taylor is effectively rim riding at that point in time. Newsom very slow. Cohn tries. Oh, that is aggressive. Trevor Malone, unfortunately, nowhere to go. And I'm not sure who that orange car is, Justin, but I believe they had significant damage as well.
Not quite sure in that sequence either, but wow. Just wow is to say the very least. A big hit there. Right off the side pods. Take one more look, believe, right here, as Trevor Malone definitely had to try and dodge this in a tough situation. You can just see how squirrely they were up in front, and wow!
I mean, no time for Malone to react. I think, fortunately for Malone, no damage on his machine. One more look if we can. And we've picked up the tail end of it. One more look I think we have to get with Mark Cohn. I'm just trying to pick up his car right now, but struggling, if you'll excuse me. Here we go. On the 39, we'll take a look from the cockpit view. I mean, it's a gap that's never there, and it doesn't end well for Cohn either. He goes hard over into the catch fencing as well, and while not as sickening as the amount of times that Newsom's car, I think, went around, just as vicious was the impact for the 39.
Yeah, huge hits. And the strategy has now just gotten interesting as a result of this caution flag here to Arjuna. Nick DeGroot, after losing track position with the last decisions, has elected to stay out with Christopher and Joe Branch. The big part is going to be they all still have to pit. All of them still have to pit. It's just a matter of what time and lap they come into pit is now going to be the big thing as a result of this caution flag.
Well, and the major issue here, Justin, now becomes that 20 laps, give or take, for DeGroot, Branch, and Stouffer on the tires. That was about the magic number that we were talking in terms of not being able to swap anymore. So if someone like Barrett Rolf, who's leading the cars on fresh tires now, up an incredible 24 positions on the day. I mean, they're going to be struggling, and they will need the caution to avoid dropping to the tail end of this pack. We should point out, 34 cars took the green flag. We're down to just 21 on the lead lap. 25, I would say circulating, but I think Newsom and Cohn are probably done for the day. So 23 still circulating. Definitely changes, I think, the picture for a lot of these cars.
Yeah, the whole complexion of this race has completely changed upside down a couple times, to say the very least. And the gamble...
Sorry, Justin. I'm going to cut you off there. It's always weird seeing stuff happen under caution. I wonder if there's been a hardware failure for the 51 car here, Justin. Spool up the replay machine one more time and take a look at this.
And has to be a hardware issue for him to go all the way down here. And I've heard drivers discuss this. If you have a hardware issue, some of the best advice drivers get is cut hard to the left and stay away from as much drivers as possible. Because if you don't, there's the risk of a major incident. He mentioned something, I believe, on the radio that something shut down possibly. And that's the biggest fear, is having something happen to where you can't see where the road is.
That looked
Jim
like...
Brooks has happened. He's lucky, to say the least.
Yeah, that looked like a VR failure or something there. I don't really know what to say. I mean, he just pulls to the left. Very much still in control of both the wheel and the throttle. A little bit close on the rejoin with Trevor Malone, who's very, very lucky to get away with what appears to be minimal, if not no, damage in our fifth caution of the day. It was Alexis Newsom and Mark Cohn getting together. It's Nick DeGroot back at the front, and we get back underway at the GraaFix eSports 300, presented by Minus 273. Once more, a very impressive launch for the race leader. Question, at least on my mind now, Justin, where's the likes of Barrett Rolfe? Struggling to close the gap, but here comes the momentum. Here comes the fresh tires.
Jason Galvin already side by side, in fact, to go a bit back and forth, and they have to keep in mind of that big picture, but also about how that back and forth is not going to be easy at all for those drivers on the older tires. They're still going to try it, though, for the race lead.
Stouffer into the lead, but now behind you can see Joe Branch is having to fend off the challenge from those cars on fresh tires. Rolfe says, I'm not waiting. Let's take this one 3 wide with Jason Galvin in the middle. Almost contact between the 28 and the 33, but they make it work. Rolfe slides all the way up the racetrack, loses a whole heap of momentum, Justin, and Matt Taylor gets up into 6th position.
How in the world did he not get involved in an incident? I'm not quite sure, because he clipped that left front tire and then some on the apron. A massive save for Barrett Rolfe to prevent himself from sliding up into that battle for position. He's going to lose the spots, but at the bright side, he's still running, and so is the rest of this pack. That could have been massive.
And expect for Rolfe to make his way up through the field in short order as well. Here comes Branch on the older tires, trying to fend off the challenge from the cars with fresher tires. He needs to do something to avoid being swarmed, but here comes Rolfe, here comes Taylor, building up momentum on the outside line. And at least for now, Branch has done a good job to defend, I should say, from the challenge from behind. Out front, his teammate is clear. Here comes Jason Galvin side by side with Nick DeGroot, and the caution flag, if it does not fly soon, Stouffer, DeGroot, and Branch, Justin, will find themselves in a whole heap of trouble.
Yeah, they're going to need this in quick with how things are faring out, especially since Galvin is coming in quickly. The difference is about a couple tenths of a second, it seems, if you get the dirty air, and with DeGroot losing that clean air, that's going to be very critical and make these drivers very easy to pick him off at this point. This is not what Nick DeGroot needed. And keep in mind, this gamble is working out well for Christopher if the caution comes out within about 10 laps, in 10 laps rather.
I mean, I would say, Justin, if the caution comes out at any point in the next 10 laps, they are in a very comfortable position. Galvin challenges, unable to get the move done as DeGroot and Hacker almost contact across the start-finish line between the two of them. You see Rolfe in the background of the shot as well, side by side with Matt Taylor. This is the type of stuff that we've seen over the past 146 laps. I have no doubt we'll see it over the next 54 as well. Heading into the final 50 here in our first of the Triple Crown events in the Lionheart Speedway Series. It is Jason Galvin who now should cycle through to the race lead. He has a bit of an overlap, Justin, and they work side by side into turn 1.
Yeah, we got it done in 3 and 4. It's just the tough part of the squeeze there from Stouffer holding up the momentum. How about 3 wide right behind him just about, though, as Matt Taylor's joining the fray for the first time inside the top 5 nearly.
And the good news for Nick de Groot here is he's on the outside, and that's where you can ride your momentum out of each of these corners. He's doing the smart thing. He's staying tucked in line and allowing Barrett Rolfe to look to the inside, because if de Groot goes down to the inside, he'll get swarmed. It doesn't matter if you lose 1 position for now. It's better than losing 3 positions later on. Stouffer, by the way, is still fighting this one back, and he doesn't have too much dirty air to deal with, Justin, and that is the crucial factor.
Look at that, though. Jason Galvin was able to make that stick to be able to make the pass, and one of the main things drivers talk about here is you need to hope that it sticks and you don't have a pinch. In that time, it stuck, and now it's the question of can Galvin fully pull away with everyone else on his strategy still scrapping hard to get up to Stouffer.
Stouffer and Co. De Groot and Branch are the other 2 cars on that strategy. Branch is all the way down to 12th position, shuffled back in the pack, but only 2.5 seconds adrift, so don't count him out just yet. And we've been focusing so much at the front that we haven't really seen just how hectic it's getting in the mid-pack here, Justin. Yes, there's some separation starting to form, but that's very much just because Joe Branch, I think, was a bit of a cork in the bottle, and now that he finds himself getting passed by Van de Sant, he's going to fall into the clutches of the group behind as well.
And this is the perfect example of if you don't get clean air or get yourself in one of the top positions, strategy is so difficult to pull off to be able to stay out, especially with the older the tires get with some of the back and forth effect. And that's starting to happen as well to Nick de Groot. And that's going to be very difficult to try and come back from at this point. The more spots lost, the worse it gets here. We are just about at that fuel window to make it to the end this time by.
And the problem is, if we get the caution now, everyone's going to come down pit lane. De Groot did get pinched down to the inside. That enables Tyler Graf, the pole position sitter, to work his way back up into 7th. Here comes De Groot, though. He's pitting. He knows that it's not worth losing this much time, Justin. It's better to go 1 lap down and be in a position to fight on raw pace.
Yeah, he's coming in right as that window opens up, so it's going to be intriguing how this plays out. Going to be able to short fuel a little bit in terms of the distance in the, or the time I should say, in the box. But it's going to be interesting where de Groot cycles if this plays out, because everybody else still also has to come in, obviously. It's just a matter of where will de Groot cycle, who will have older tires compared to the rest of the pack. Now, as these drivers continue to scrap now for the 2nd position.
And Galvin is loving this. I mean, half a second, the distance between 1st and 2nd, is Hacker still unable to get down the inside, as I think de Groot is finally rolling off of pit road in 22nd position net. But in some clean air, that's relatively important, Justin. De Groot can build up the momentum, build up the speed, but no draft. That will be somewhat of a deciding factor as well. Yellow flag is out. That will be more of a factor, because unfortunately for de Groot, he finds himself trapped 1 lap down. I think it's the Tyler Graf, number 26 car, pole position. And indeed, look at the damage there, Justin. Pole position will once more not take victory here at Homestead.
And talk about terrible timings to pit. It's Barrett Rolfe who gets contact with Matt Taylor as Taylor gets hit in front, and he slides up and collects Graf and Trevor Malone. And it was another sequence similar to what was seen with Mark Cohn and company, where drivers tried to fill a hole. It got tight in terms of that hole closing. Taylor gets pushed into the wall by Ken Hacker, and that's where the pinball effect starts.
I mean, I'm going to try and not be too disappointed here, but I mean, it's the 2nd time we've seen a very similar type of an incident, and I don't want to say I'm biased, because unfortunately I slightly am, because I'm Kinsella's teammate. I think Kinsella was less wrong to do what he did. Kinsella came across at a time where Charles T had no overlap, didn't have a significant speed advantage, Justin, and was just trying to come up into line. In this one, it was always clear that Hacker was going to get into that pocket of air. And unfortunately for Hacker, he just didn't recognize it and made contact. Pit road, though, a busy place. Because at the end of the day, Justin, the window is open, and if you're Christopher, you are a very happy man.
And if you're DeGroot, you're the opposite of a happy person because you've lost all your track position as a result of this. But you can see it's going to be interesting who gets the race off the pit lane. Christopher, a stellar stop, 8.2. That's half a second quicker than Galvin.
And the crucial factor here, Justin, is even though Galvin required less fuel to get placed into the car, because they both took tires, they are both effectively limited by that amount of time. It wasn't the fuel that would have helped Galvin pip Christopher there. It was just execution in pit road. Christopher hit every single one of his marks, and he'll take us back to green flag here. We've had 6 cautions on the day, tying the most in Lionheart record, but at the same time, this is the longest race that we've had at the Homestead Miami track. We might be in for a very interesting run here, because I do think if we go green for 20 laps and then get a caution, someone could come down pit road and really try something different.
We've seen how decent the strategy can work if you're inside some of the top positions, like inside the top 10. But I don't know if you try and take the gamble if you're already up there in the track position. If you're in the back, I think it's thought process of why not. So the tough part's going to be DeGroot is now pinned. He's going to have to take the wave here along with James Grahula here, 20 of 21st position. That couldn't have come at a worse time, that caution flag.
So Nick DeGroot will get his lap back and will cycle to the tail end of the field. It kind of sums up his race and his season so far, I would say, Justin. I mean, pace on display the last time out at the Milwaukee Mile, similar bad luck in the Lionheart Retro Series. Pace on the ovals, might still have some speed to find, I think, on the road courses.
Absolutely, and in fact, I'm hearing a few drivers starting to fuel burn a little bit. So drivers are thinking about that as well. Jason Galvin is the one who's fuel burning a ton right now in the 42 machine.
It's a bit early to be doing some fuel burning, I would think, because hypothetically, if we do go green, Justin, we are... Actually, no, we're good, right? Because the fuel's still between 46 and 47. Why not do less fuel in the pit stop, though? I mean, yes, it's not going to save him any time, but all you do when you fuel burn is run the risk of blowing your engine. You raise your temperatures to risky points, and quite honestly, I mean, why not just do a little bit of it in the pit stop instead?
I'm curious on that as well, but I'm wondering if he just took the gamble of, okay, I want to make sure for sure I'm going to be good, take a full tank, be able to fill it up to the top, and then just if I feel like there's going to be caution flags burning out, since there's going to be an extra couple laps some of these drivers are going to have on their tanks, you might make it to the end. So, interesting, but at this point, Galvin's been quick. It's going to be a fun battle for the race lead, I think, when we get back going here, because we've seen a lot of hard fighting, especially from Galvin here in this race tonight.
And it will be 40 to go when we come back to the green flag. Top 10, we'll show you the movers and shakers in just a few moments' time, but double digits for the majority of the field. Eric Schaus up 29 positions into 4th, but it is Indiana's own Christopher that is at the front of the field. 6 cautions on the day so far. Can we get the green flag run till the end of this race? It'll be Jason Galvin 2nd, Ken Hacker in 3rd, Schaus as mentioned in 4th, Joe Branch back up into 5th, and AJ Musselman in 6th position. Let's get back to the green flag racing action here at the GraaFix eSports 300. Good launch from Stouffer. I think Joe Branch might be the closest one here to trying to get the move done. Van de Sant as well up into the top 7. Some interesting runs here, Justin, and we will show those movers and shakers in just a few moments' time, but you can see they're 2 wide, about 4 deep further back in the pack.
And already Galvin getting a huge run down the straightaway to quickly take away that race lead and then some. This is where the defense starts to come into play. Will Galvin go for the back and forth for the draft? Will he try and start to snake around if he gets the point that time? He allows the run as caution.
Quick yellow flag, then 7th on the day. Michael Hagstrom, pointed in the wrong direction. Let's go take a look, Justin, at what's happened here. Spool up our wonderful all-seeing replay machine. Hagstrom with contact with DeGroot. And is that Mike Rigney that gets mixed up as well in this one?
I think that's Hyson potentially he'll say maybe in the 18, I believe, in that sequence. But the hole just closed up and quickly. DeGroot tried to shoot through the gap. The gap closed up fast.
I mean, third time we've seen that today. I mean, I think it gives you an indication, Justin. There's a lot of difference in speeds between different cars, the runs that they get, the draft that they can use as well. And, well, it's all going to be in race control's hands at the end of this race. The Carnox race results that we get to show our viewers, they will be very unofficial.
Yeah, plenty of big incidents in this race tonight. It's been incredible, though, once we've had the runs on how some of these battles are. But this opens up the fuel burn window, at the very least, if you're Jason Galvin. Makes it more realistic as he's burning it a ton, if you can hear him.
Well, let's jump on board. And you can see, the revs and hear the engine as well. Just listen. Let's explain what's going on here, Justin. He's got the clutch in. He is basically maxing out that throttle. He is pushing the engine to its limit, but effectively not letting him drive it forward at all.
Yeah, this is going to mean a lighter car and, in theory, a faster car down the straightaways. But as you talked about, there's the risk of, if you do it too much, you blow the engine. So you need to be careful when it comes to the temps as well to make sure you don't pop the motor and cost yourself in that circumstance. So if you're doing it, you've got to be careful, very careful, on how you do it and how you execute it.
And so we have had 7 cautions on the day, but at the end of the day as well, we have to remember this is the longest race that Lionheart has run from Homestead, Miami. Justin, we got to call the IndyCar here. I mean, I don't think we necessarily saw too much different, even though drivers had the in-car tools. If anything, I would say these cars are more aggressive and more racy earlier in the run, and then obviously with the lack of adjustability, as the run goes on, the tires burn off, drivers find it more and more difficult to fight side by side and to make moves actually happen.
I agree with you on that one, and it's definitely been big on how you adapt to the circumstances with this car tonight. And I have to say there's been a lot of great work put in terms of the speed for the set, and you can tell that with the short run in particular. It's just the nature of the car, right? When you're going back and forth like that, it can make it so tricky as well, Arjuna.
Yeah, it really can. And so should get back to the action with 34 remaining now. The more and more cautions we get here, Justin, the more and more burning that these cars can do. And I don't know about you. You are much more of a NASCAR guy than me. In an Indy car, I always feel very, very reluctant to flog the engine like that. You never know when it's going to let go on you. What's your thoughts? In NASCAR, it's a much more common kind of a thing. How risky do you feel that you could push it at a race like this?
Honestly, as a driver, I rarely do the fuel burn method. It's a lot more so trying to adjust the chassis and, in turn, trying to lower the back end as a result of having less fuel in the tank and the pickup to be able to low fuel the car. You don't necessarily, in a lot of cases, fuel burn in the engine unless it's, say, in a fixed race where drivers will take that risk and try and get a little bit run faster, because on the stock car side, it's faster and fire off, but it gets tighter as the run goes on because you have that less weight in the back end and it picks up the back end of the car / truck. So all that's thought processed in as well. In the IndyCar, it's different, obviously, where it lightens up the car in general and it makes it quicker throughout the course of a run.
You're watching round 4 action in the Lionheart Speedway Series, live on racespottv and rebroadcast on ESTV. The GraaFix eSports 300 presented by -273. The lights are off on the pace car. We are getting ready to get back to green flag action. As you see, I think that's Matt Houston making his way out of pit road. Not sure exactly what was going on there for him. Top 3, though, Stouffer, Galvin, and Hacker. They're all looking very feisty. They all want to taste victory here at the virtual Homestead Miami Speedway. It's been an exciting start to our Triple Crown journey. No double points, because this is only a 300-mile affair. I say only because, of course, when IndyCar came here, that was the race distance they had as well. But Stouffer brings us back to the green flag. What hopefully will be the final time today. Very good launch as always, for the race leader, Justin. And you can't really see too many moves being made. Joe Branch trying to get onto the back of Ken Hacker. Here comes the run down the back straightaway.
And a good launch for Joe Branch. And we've talked about Joe Branch being up and down the running order all day long, especially with some of these strategy gambles. But look at this. Galvin to the point. I wouldn't be surprised to see the snakes start to break out in a couple laps or so. Too big of a run, though, for Stouffer to defend.
I think Hacker even thought about making it 3 wide for a second, then realized that, oh, not maybe such a great idea. On board with Galvin. What does the 13 machine choose to do? Doesn't choose to cut him off. I would think that's smart, Justin. 33 to go here. We might still be in for about 10 more laps of swap drafting between the two of them. Watch Galvin, though. And no chance to block this run from Stouffer. Side by side, down into turn 1 once more.
I think if I'm Galvin, try and cross him up, get a run off the banking. That's exactly what he's doing off this corner to be able to get back inside, make it side by side. The more they fight, the more this allows Ken Hacker to think about, okay, where do I plot to get myself into this fight?
Front four have separated themselves from fifth on back as AJ Musselman has Eric Schaus, Alexander Van der Sant, and Jim Brooks in his rearview mirrors. We did say that there's been double-digit movers and shakers as Stouffer back to the race lead with Hacker trying to find a way around the outside. Now take a look at that, though, Justin. Other than Stouffer and Charles Teed, everyone in the top 10 is up double-digit positions. That is incredible.
And we were talking about this before the race, where in some cases, you got to be able to take advantage of the attrition. And guess what? These drivers are taking advantage of the attrition in part. And some of these gambles have really shooken up this running order right from the get-go. That's how Galvin got to the front. That's how drivers like Hacker got to the front. Van der Sant was able to avoid some of the trouble. Musselman's been able to avoid the trouble. It's been different as how some of these drivers have played this out, and it's caused a very interesting race for these closing stages.
Side by side, Galvin and Stouffer still work for the race lead. We're going to take one more break here on RaceSpot.tv. We'll be uninterrupted to the end. Don't go anywhere. The conclusion of the GraaFix eSports 300 is back after this.
Wreck avoidances.
Stay low. He's high, stay low.
Daring passes.
Oh, you're gonna get it.
Silly jumps.
Oh my god, a drive-through.
The thrill of victory.
They're against the wall. Good win, Mark. Stay low.
And the occasional mishap.
My sim crashed.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
We are back under caution here live from the Homestead Miami Speedway. RaceSpot.tv's coverage of the Lionheart Speedway Series and round 4 of the GraaFix eSports 300 continues. Justin Prince and Arjuna Kankipati to take you through the next 26 laps and the conclusion of a very exciting first round of the Triple Crown in this championship. And Justin, it's been back and forth. Caution flies then for the 8th time today, excuse me. We've got a replay to take a look at in just a few moments' time.
Yeah, that battle for the race lead was getting really intriguing with the side-by-side, but in the incident caused by essentially one driver getting hit from the left rear, that ends up bringing us under caution and really bunches us back up. It's going to make things interesting, though, because several drivers took the gamble we were talking about with the tires as a result of this contact.
We'll take a look at the subsequent part of it as Trevor Malone has nowhere to go. Unsighted. It's Eric Schaus that really starts the incident. Let's take a look at this one, Justin. It was with AJ Musselman, and talk us through what happens through turn 1.
He actually gets a bit of a tap right here from Van der Sant to the left rear. That's enough to send him sliding. Just about had it saved, but ends up hitting Ron Hacker. Gives him suspension damage. James Grahula and Trevor Malone nowhere to go in this situation. You'll see from the onboard how tight things got to the front wing of Van der Sant, to that right rear tire right here. A little bit of a bop.
And now jump on board with Grahula. Kinsella was side by side with Barrett Rolfe. He will be, for the 2nd time today, very fortunate. And you see the subsequent contact. Really nothing that Grahula could do to avoid that one. Back to live. Let's jump and take a look at this wonderful aerial shot of the cars. 25 laps to go. Lights are still on the pace car. Top 5, Stouffer, Galvin, Hacker, Brunch, and Musselman. And like we were showing just before we went to the commercial break, Justin, a lot of these cars are up double-digit positions. I'm sure Jason Galvin is burning that fuel once more.
He definitely is right now at this point, and it's going to be intriguing how 10th on back fares out, because this has been an attrition-filled race, and this caution flag allowed some drivers to mix things up, try and see if they can get the fresh rubber to work. We've seen how things have played out for some of the drivers with the tires, but the thing is, they're going to have to leapfrog about 9+ cars to have a shot to get up to Christopher, Jason Galvin and company. And that's the tough part, is are they going to have enough time, let alone be able to get enough air to be able to make all the moves to be able to utilize that?
Well, if you're Nick DeGroot, might as well try something. He's run around at the front of this field for so long. Qualified on the outside of that front row, but just caught out by the timing of the caution coming down onto the pit road. Matt Taylor as well, we're hearing, got clipped in the incident, so he cycles the 12th with some damage repair as well to his car. 9 cars did not come down onto pit road. The last of them, Barrett Rolfe, is trying to get back up into the top 5 for what will be his a very impressive start to the season for him. 8 cautions on the day, 23 laps to go in the first of our Triple Crown events. The pace car down onto the safety of pit road, and once more a great launch for our leader as Christopher takes us back to the green flag action. We now wait and see once more, Justin, who gets the best run. You can see Van der Sant and Musselman all over the back of Joe Branch.
Yeah, providing a ton of pressure as already there goes the move. Musselman able to get a peek inside. Just Joe Branch wasn't able to keep up with the top 3 who are only going back and forth for the lead.
And look at the gap that they managed to build up as well. It's separation of 7/10 as side by side they go, both for first and for 4th. So too wide as well. You can see too deep between Joe Branch, Musselman, Van der Sant, and then there's Charles Teed in that 5 machine. 22 laps to go. Justin, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Who's going to come out on top? Galvin versus Stouffer. It really is anyone's game.
I really like the chances at the very moment for Galvin because he's been able to defend well. He's been able to get strong runs. I think he's got a good shot at this point. As long as he gets clean air, by the time these drivers get to the crossover point, and they are approaching that crossover point in the next couple of laps, that's why the urgency is so high up here for these drivers.
And we've already seen Galvin take an impressive victory on the short track at Phoenix in the Lionheart IndyCar Series. Stouffer wants to add to his 5 Lionheart IndyCar Series victories as he comes back down the inside. As you see Joe Branch and AJ Musselman continue to duel it out behind these cars as well. A separation continues to form. It's 1 second between 3rd and 4th right now, Justin, and that's what Galvin, Stouffer, and Hacker will really be looking for. Yeah,
this is going to be important for those drivers as here comes the snake now. This is exactly what we've seen when Galvin was trying to defend Newsom. The thing is, Stouffer is not backing down this time.
And while Newsom is a fairly inexperienced competitor, Stouffer is a veteran of not just the Lionheart Racing Series, but I'm sure racing wheel to wheel with Jason Galvin as well. And I think that increased familiarity and the trust, Justin, it just means that these cars are willing to do things a bit more. It's going to be very close across the line, I think, at the end of this race, because in terms of the magic window, we're 25 laps into the stint, and they're still able to swap back and forth.
Don't forget there's the caution flag laps also factored in, so it's more realistically with the caution laps around this mark, if not in a couple laps. So I think we're going to see them start to separate out inside 10 laps to go, possibly, but we'll have to wait and see. Keep in mind as well, by the way, the drivers, the fresh tires, have only gotten up to 9th position, even though they're setting the fastest laps of the race.
Take a look here as it's Nick DeGroot who is trying to follow Matt Taylor on the fresher tires. You saw Taylor getting very close to the outside wall through turn number 2, really building up all the momentum he can. But Taylor now, the highest of the cars on fresh rubber, works his way up into the top 8 as in front of him, Barrett Rolfe and Alexander Van der Sant continue to do battle. For the race lead, though, the swaps continue to come thick and fast. It will be 15 to go at the line, Justin. And Stouffer and Galvin very content still to be able to swap back and forth.
Yeah, and Galvin is still trying to keep up that momentum. Here comes the run on the high side as well. And Stouffer's trying to give him a little bit of a later arc, push him higher up the racetrack so he can complete the slider.
And now Stouffer is much more persistent and consistent in defending the inside. Doesn't do it down on this back straightaway, but progressive banking, of course. High line will always carry more momentum. Over under now incoming from the number 13 machine. 14 laps to go, Justin. This is going to be closer. This might actually be one of the closest finishes that the Lionheart Series has seen at the Virtual Homestead Miami.
Some of the closest back and forths we've seen all season long with how things have been playing out in this race. Homestead for all 3 series has provided some throwers in 3 different ways, and we've seen tonight how things have played out. Keep in mind that Ken Hacker's just watching with the popcorn, is in the popcorn seat in case trouble ensues.
So we've got the catbird seat, now we've got the popcorn seat. I do like where we're going with this. Carnock's on board with Chris Stouffer as once more continued swapping back and forth. The thumbs up cancer down machine back into the race lead as Indiana's finest in this IndyCar. He really does enjoy it. Not just the IR18, but the DW12 as well. Continues to go back and forth. And this is actually working out nicely for this front two. You'll notice, Justin, Ken Hacker has not had any sort of an opportunity to try and make something work.
That's because of the aero washing part, I think, and that's pushing them back. But keep in mind that the drivers with the fresh tires, they're starting to come in quick by a couple tenths of a second quicker than these drivers. Matt Taylor has already made his way up to 5th position. All while these drivers fight, the more they scrap back and forth, the more this helps Taylor.
Well, I think Barrett Rolfe is actually helping out those race leaders right now on some worn rubber as compared to Taylor behind him. Taylor down to the inside, though, might be able to make this one work with Van der Sant lurking in the background. Taylor slings the race first red machine all the way down to the inside, trusts in the downforce and up into the top 5. Watch for Taylor to charge up through the field, but Rolfe is not going to make his life easy. Just like as for Stouffer and Galvin, they are not helping each other out still, Justin.
Yeah, Ken Hacker is now getting back a little bit closer now that they're fighting so aggressively, and they have lap traffic ahead. 15th place Alex Gouillon, who may play a factor in this battle for the race lead and give some slipstream down the straight to Galvin.
On board with Ken Hacker in 3rd position. There you see the lap traffic. Is it going to be a factor? Stouffer slides up the track into the path of Galvin. Hacker slips down the inside of the lapped car. Still side by side for the race lead. And I tell you what, Justin, we talked about magic numbers. I don't think there's a magic number between the two of them. They will go back and forth. Whoever leads at the white flag is in control of their own destiny.
It's been incredible that they've been able to keep up with one another. They're setting their fastest lap times of the race. Keep in mind throughout this run as what a squeeze from Stouffer. Galvin tried to keep his foot in it on the high side. Now takes it back up top.
Both of these drivers respect each other so much. You can see that in the way that they race each other out of turn 4, continuing to be very close between these two drivers. Yellow flag out. It's Christopher Kresge. Doesn't end the race, Justin. We will have a 3-lap shootout, if I've done the math correctly.
Oh boy, and now it gets entertaining to see how the back and forth goes as Kresge absolutely demolished as a result of this incident. Might have ping-ponged off the wall a little bit and actually rode the catch fence as a result of this right here.
I just want to say, by the way, it was the slightest of contact with the Canadian Andrew Kinsella, who really has had a very exciting race here, Justin. I mean, how many contacts can I count? I think I can count 3 or 4 just in this race alone, but you'll watch here. It's just a bit of spookiness there, and in fact, Kresge wasn't all the way up against the wall, and the slightest of contacts, sends him into the catch fencing.
Yeah, massive, massive hit, and that's race over, obviously, in that situation. But the fuel burn's going to be very critical now. Galvin's been fuel burning each of these times. I think a majority of the field's going to be fuel burning now, but this is now Stouffer versus Galvin. You said these drivers could be in control of their own destiny. Well, they're definitely in control of their own destiny now based on how this closing stage comes into play. Likely going to be the last restart of the race is because the magic number and the point of no return, I should say, is around 3 laps to go here.
This is going to be close. This is going to be tense. Here you can hear the fuel burning from Jason Galvin. Chris Stouffer does not appear to be doing the same thing, Justin. This is interesting. I'm not sure what the situation is, and I'm looking forward to talking to these drivers. Whoever comes out on top in the HyperX victory lane, because it's been racecraft, it's been strategy, it's been everything that a driver needs that has put these two drivers at the top of this field.
Absolutely. Galvin with the strategy to get up front. Stouffer's been up front the entire race in various mixtures of different paces and conditions on where the clean air is coming to play. And don't forget, drivers like Hacker, Branch, and Rolf are looking for big-time top 5s. This has been an impressive race throughout, an impressive job by all the drivers to be able to compete at this high of a level with how much respect's been shown throughout the race as well with some of these battles. But at this point, it's going to be very intense to try and come away with the checker flag. It might come down to a drag race now as a result of this caution flag, period.
The closest ever finish at Homestead Miami in the Indy cars, and this does post-date the DW12, so in the IR18 days, 3/100th of a second. The following year, it was 1 full tenth. That was season 7, that was season 8. Who came out on the worst end of that one in both occasions? Indiana's own Chris Stouffer. He will be remembering those memories right now. He led the most laps a couple of years ago in Season 8 of the Lionheart IndyCar Series, and for a race that's only finished under caution once in the DW12 days, we saw it, Justin, finish under caution earlier this year in the IndyCar Series as well. Adam Blocker taking victory then. Who knows? This could end the very same way.
This is going to be an exciting one, and the picks are up in the air at this point. You put me on the spot a little bit before. Honestly, it could go with either Stouffer or Galvin, in my opinion, at this point. Now, you can't just pick one driver now. It can go either direction, and you can't forget about the fact that Matt Taylor might have a shot here if they get overly aggressive, or if anything happen here, or anyone else in the backfield. Taylor is the first of the drivers on the fresh tires, keep in mind, in 6th position. And that's after having damage taken to his right side pod getting repaired, essentially.
But if anything, Justin, I mean, Taylor's the one who's lost out the most as a result of this caution, because he's went from being someone who could have used those tires, especially as we saw the cars out front losing track and really slipping and sliding up the track. That's a car that could have taken advantage of the situation.
But he was also more than 2 seconds back of the race leaders. This now bunches them back up, so we'll have to see how this all plays out here with 3 laps to go when the green flag flies to decide it, Arjuna.
This is going to be intense. Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart. Nothing, I think, sums up what we've seen since We came here in March to kick off both the Lionheart IndyCar Series and the Retro Series. Stouffer versus Galvin versus Hacker. As Stouffer bunches up the pack, back underway here in the GraaFix eSports 300. The shootout for the win. It's 3 laps left on the board, and down into turn 1, Stouffer leads from Galvin. Look at the gaggle of cars, though, squabbling over 3rd position. They're almost 3 wide, with Barrett Rolfe trying to jump into the mix, but ultimately, 1st versus 2nd. Here comes Galvin. Here comes the swap for the lead.
And a great run for Galvin, but expect that snake to start to build up potentially next lap. Too big of a run, too close for him to try and defend. Stouffer to the inside.
And they're squabbling hard behind. That will please both of these drivers. It will be white flag in the air next time around. Stouffer into the lead, defends to the inside. Oh, it's craziness for 3rd on back as well. Can Powerslide and Adrenaline Motorsports get a 1st and 3rd? A double podium will really cap off this first Triple Crown race in the best way possible. It's Stouffer versus Galvin, though. 1.5 miles left as the white flag flies here in the GraaFix eSports 300. Stouffer painting the white line, trying to take the shortest distance possible. Contact between them. Galvin's up into the wall. He's going to slam into the inside wall as well. Indiana's own Chris Stouffer to his first ever Lionheart Speedway Series victory. It will add to the 5 IndyCar victories he has as well. He'll take victory in the GraaFix eSports 300 presented by Minus 273. I believe it was Joe Branch getting into 2nd, so Adrenaline Powerslide 1-2. Ken Hacker in 3rd. Barrett Rolfe up into 4th. And Matt Taylor, fresh tires, carries him to 5th position, Justin. Dramatic finish there. And my word, a contact between Galvin and Stouffer. Race Control has something to take a look at.
They're definitely going to have to take a look at that, especially with how tight things got there. But, wow. What a fireworks-filled affair to end off this race. Wow. Is the best thing I can really say after all that. Wow.
I don't know about you, Justin. I think I partially lost my voice. So much screaming, so much shouting. And at the end of the day, Drama and Adrenaline Powerslide, their first victory on the season. Indiana's own, I'm sure, will be very, very delighted. Before we go take a look at these post-race results, I think we owe it to ourselves, Justin, to go take a look at that final lap. The aerial coverage will tell us all. And let's see what happened after 300 miles of racing. It all came down to turns 1 and turns 2.
Indeed, let's take a look at that replay as you'll see how tight things got. Galvin was trying to squeeze. Stouffer started sliding up, and then right here up the track he goes.
It's the slightest of contact, and, well, it ends in disaster for Jason Galvin, but for Chris Stouffer, it is victory here from the Homestead Miami Speedway, the first of our Triple Crown events, and that will cap off the 300 miles of action in very fine fashion for the Adrenaline Powerslide team. One more look at that one, Justin, if we can, because it's a tough one, and like I said, Race Control really has a task on their hand to figure out who's responsible and what the appropriate penalty should be.
Yeah, you'll see one more time, and they were just hard-fought racing, in my opinion, here in this circumstance. You're fighting for the race win. There was a bit of a slide up a touch bit with Stouffer, but still, you're racing for the win. And it was going to come down to a photo finish if that contact didn't happen. Just a tough break for those drivers. Tough break.
And we'll take a look at the finish very quickly for 3rd position. As you see, Joe Branch was clear coming down into the final couple of corners. Take one more look at this aerial replay. Barrett Rolfe on the outside looking for his first ever Lionheart Speedway Series podium. And it just unfortunately comes up short. The drag race, though, between Rolfe and Taylor, it's Rolfe who wins out, claims 4th position, Taylor in 5th. Ken Hacker, his first ever Lionheart Series podium, a Speedway Series podium, excuse me. I'm sure that will be something he will celebrate in very fine fashion. Let's go ahead then and take a look at the unofficial race results because, as mentioned, Race Control, they've got a task on their hands and a lot of things to go and take a look at. So the Carnox race results, it is your GraaFix eSports 300 winner, Chris Stouffer for Adrenaline Motorsports. 6/10 clear of his teammates, so 1 and 2. That will solidify a lead in the championship that at one point that was looking much, much sketchier, with Ken Hacker rounding out the podium in the 24 machine. Barrett Rolfe up an incredible 24 positions on the day. He finishes in 4th, one off at the podium that I'm sure he is searching for, but it won't be long before Rolfe heads into not just the podium, but into HyperX victory lane as well. Matt Taylor in 5th, AJ Musselman up 17 positions into 6th, Charles Teed in 7th, Alexander Van der Sat up 16 positions of his own. The Canadian Andrew Kinsella guest appearance in today's race, 9th for him at a track that he knows the taste of victory very, very well. Nick de Groot rounds out the top 10, by the way. Could have been a potential race victory for him, but he'll bounce back, I'm sure, as we head into the month of May and some very exciting races. George Ansaldo, the series organizer, finishes in 11th, with Eric Schaus recovering from his own incident to finish in 12th. Jason Galvin does finish on the lead lap, and because of some of the carnage earlier in this race, he recovers to 13th position. Matt Houston, Alex Guyon, the only cars that finish one lap down, with Michael Hagstrom, Christopher Kresge soldiering their way on to the checkered flag. And then Ron Hacker, James Krahula, James Brooks are the first of our retirees. And Justin, there are a lot of them here. Of course, the major ones being Alexis Newsom, Tony Schowen, first and second in our championship. And the result is, I'm waiting to see what the results look like in terms of the points come the end of this race.
Yeah, major championship implications as a result of this race, with several of the contenders getting involved in trouble. This is going to really change up who's out the front. Chris Stouffer, I think, is the one who benefits the most, though. He came into tonight 4th in those point standings, 26 points back, and with all his championship contenders and competitors essentially having trouble outside of Matt Taylor, things get really intriguing. And this also helps Joe Branch, who was inside the top 10, remember, and lost positions in the points after the last race with how things shaped out of the Milwaukee Mile. That's going to be a bounce back for him.
And you want to know just how much respect there is between Galvin and Stouffer. I'm in the series Discord right now, just peeking into the commotion in the paddock, the virtual paddock as it was. Galvin has already said, robbed of a very nice finish. That was fun stuff. Congratulations on the win. Barrett Rolfe as well, I think, sums it up as best as you can. That race was, and then turn your caps lock on, bananas. Not sure how much better we could sum that one up, but I tell you what, it's time to dive on into the HyperX post-race show, because the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, the makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com, and don't forget to use the promo code Lionheart15, that's LIONHRT15, for 15% off all orders. And in HyperX victory lane, it is Chris Stouffer, Indiana's own. Victory here, I'm sure, will be very, very sweet. And let's bring him into the commentary booth. Chris, congratulations on victory there. It was a dramatic race, and one that I think went back and forth with basically everyone in the pack. What does it feel like to take victory in the first Triple Crown race of the season?
It feels good to be on top. It was a tough race. You know, Galvin there at the end raced me hard, clean the whole way. Being him already talked about it, I looked at it. It was net code. You know, unfortunate that our race had to end that way, because it would have came down to the wire. I know. I was glad to keep it up front, keep it out of trouble all night, and able to bring home a win is always nice.
And at times, Chris, I mean, it was looking up and down for the outfit. I mean, unfortunate for Tony that points didn't go in his direction, but Joe was struggling in terms of pace. A strategy brought him back into the mix of things, and first and second for the team. It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, first and second, 1-2, with teammates, you're right. It doesn't get much better than that. It would have been nice to have Tony up there. He certainly had the pace to be up at the front as well. So, it's not the way it goes every night. I hadn't even looked exactly to see what happened to him. I know he got wrecked out, and it's a bummer. But hey, I was able to get the win, and of course Joe coming in second, 1-2 for the team. That's great for the team championship.
And while this wasn't double points in the Triple Crown, I'm sure this is still important in terms of momentum. One of the first longer races of the season, not just for the Speedway Series, but across of all three competitions, Chris. What does this mean heading into the next Triple Crowns? Because these longer races, they do have a lot more attrition. I was trying to pick my words carefully there, but 13 cars finished on the lead lap out of 34 here. The next two of these Triple Crown races, they're 500 miles. You can't afford to make any sort of mistake, get involved in a crash. What's your mindset heading into those next two rounds?
I like the long races. Actually, you know, the real long races I seem to do better at. It's the shorter sprint races that always seem to catch me out. So, you know, I'm always looking forward to them. I'm surprised to hear 13 cars on the lead lap. I had no idea, to be quite honest. How many cars I figured with as many cautions we're getting, we had to get through some cars and go green. I was surprised it didn't go green with that long green flag run at the beginning. But you know, my hats off to HyperX and of course the Lionheart series here for putting on everything, and you guys in the booth. It was great.
Congratulations, Chris. Go off and celebrate. We'll see you in a couple of weeks' time for more continued coverage here in the Lionheart Speedway Series. So, Chris Stouffer, Indiana zone. Let's now bring in his teammate, Joe Branch, who I'm sure is celebrating the podium here, because at one point it didn't necessarily look like it was on the cards, Joe. You were on the edge of the top 20, fighting in a lot of dirty air, but second place. It doesn't get much better than that. And, of course, the team 1-2 as well. Must be a pretty happy day here from Homestead, Miami.
Yeah, I'm pumped for the 1-2 more than anything. Chris getting the win and being able to have a good result. Being back there in the middle of the pack, it was not fun at times, and there was times where I felt like I was being too conservative, but I wanted to finish and I knew it was double points. And then I just kept creeping up, and all of a sudden found myself in 5th and 5th and kept getting good restarts and just kept going forward.
I hate to burst your bubble, unfortunately, Joe, because this was only a 300-mile Triple Crown race. No double points, but I think, nevertheless, very important in terms of the championship picture for you. Heading now into an important month of May, and one I think that is going to mix things up a bit more than people really anticipate. Atlanta, Phoenix, and Gateway. 2 short tracks, and then a 1.5-miler known for shredding tires. What do you think about that schedule? Because, of course, May, known more for the Brickyard and IndyCar racing. It should be quite fun, I think, though, to bring the DW12 to some very interesting tracks.
Yeah, we ran at Atlanta back in the old Lionheart days, and I always remember liking it because it would the car would end up loose over the run, and that's where I tend to move forward. So I definitely like that. Phoenix, so love Gateway. Phoenix will be one of them maintained for me. I'm never good at that track.
What was it like driving without any sort of in-car tools? Because, of course, when the IndyCar series came here, you had the weight jacker and the ARBs. Now it was just, you know, lifting where you could, finding whatever pockets of clean air. Was it a bit more difficult to really try and make some ground up further in the pack?
Yeah, 100%. I don't like the car tight. I like to loosen it up. I like to slide it around a bit, and this particular setup was a bit tight, so not being able to have the tools to get it to where I want it is always tough. Typically at Homestead, I'm able to take the lower line and really get run on guys, but it really wasn't working tonight, so I had to change my entire approach about halfway through, and finally figured out how to keep my momentum up.
Well, congratulations. Whatever you did, Joe, it clearly worked out. Second place, and, of course, the team 1-2 should be pretty happy heading into the month of May.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, Joe Branch, impressive run. 16 positions gained on the day. It doesn't sound, unfortunately, like we're going to get Ken Hacker into the broadcast booth just for now. Sounds like some technical issues after the checkered flag. About as fortunate timing as you can get. So instead, let's bring in the man who was robbed of fighting for a chance at victory here in the GraaFix eSports 300. And Justin Prince is standing by with Jason Galvin.
Jason, first things first, heartbreaking end to this race for you. 13th place finish as a result of the last lap situation. Talk us through those final laps. 3 laps to decide it. Fighting side by side, wheel to wheel with Chris Stouffer.
Yeah, you know, I mean, first off, I want to say, and I didn't hear Chris's interview, but he and I caught up before he came in. I mean, Chris didn't do anything wrong, right? I mean, there was clearly some net code there. Neither of us had an incident point. That is what it is. It's part of it's part of sim racing. It's not even an iRacing issue, right? It's part of doing things on the internet, right? So, you know, there's nobody to blame. To me, it's no different than, you know, if you're racing for the win in real life and, you know, a piece of debris comes on the track and knocks you out in the last lap. It's just part of it. So, Chris ran me clean. Actually, Chris and I and Joe were just talking, you know, they're on adrenaline and I'm on loud pedal, and historically our two teams have kind of clashed and rivaled a little bit, but I think that one thing that holds true is that we've gotten to a point over the last 3 or 4 seasons at least where you know, we don't all have to be like best friends in the world, but we certainly respect the hell out of each other. I think the world of both Chris and Joe as a driver, and Chris in this car, Chris at Homestead. I mean, Chris is a really good driver. And Chris and I have had some great battles over the years in Lionheart. So it was really fun racing with him. And, you know, the last lap deal is like, you know, what am I going to do about it? You know, I can't hold my head about it. Netcode happens. It was a great race. I was where I wanted to be, really. I wanted to be on the outside as long as I could keep Chris kind of even with me. And as you saw, I mean, we were wheel to wheel there in 1 and 2. So, you know, I felt like if I could have kind of kept him pinched down, we could have got to 3. And 3 and 4 was a little more favorable to the high line on exit. And if I could have pinched him down again, I might have won the drag race. And who knows, maybe I wouldn't have. But it would have been a hell of a race for you and Arjuna to call. And I'm disappointed on that standpoint that you two didn't get to call, you know, what should have been a battle to the line. But good run for the loud pedal team, and thumbs up, cancer down, and Global Electronic Technology. Homestead's not a great track for me. My first lap was the first lap of qualifying because I was in Las Vegas with the NHRA all weekend. Didn't even know if I had raced tonight. So happy to have put on a good show up front, and you know, we'll move on to the next one.
Let's quickly talk a little bit more about this fight, because it seemed to extend on, by the way, for about 20 plus laps between you and Chris Stouffer and company. How difficult was it to battle that back and forth throughout the final closing stages? Because as the tires worn out, the trend seemed to be about lap 15 to 20 earlier on in the race. You get clean air, you pull away by 1.1 seconds. That didn't happen, though, in those closing stages right before that shootout.
Yeah, actually, it's funny that you asked that, because Chris just asked me the same thing. I think his exact question quote was something like, "What the bleep were you doing every time we came off of turn 4 and you went down to the white line?" And I was like, well, I mean, it worked earlier in the race, right? Like, I got out in front of Alexis, I did it, lost the draft, I moved on. I got out in front of Nick and did it, lost the draft, and moved on. Got out in front of, I think, Ken Hacker, lost the draft, I moved on, I drove away. Chris was like, yeah, but like, with like yellows, and I was like, yeah, I know. I mean, so like, you're right, Justin, like 15 to 20 laps. You know, I think maybe some of the, you know, better, more consistent drivers could get closer to 30 before they really started to go away. But we just had so many yellows on that last run. Then, you know, like Chris accidentally took a full tank, he told me. So he had a lot of fuel, but I was burning, you know, we restarted and I was like 0.08 to the good. You know, I made sure I was right there. So light fuel. Not a lot of wear, even though we had a lot of laps. We ran a lot of caution laps, and so there was just not an opportunity. I mean, I think you probably saw me a couple times come off of 4, and it looked like Chris might have had a bad 3 and 4, so I came way down, and I was like, man, just like, don't let him get to me by turn 1, and maybe I can arrow wash him, and never had a chance.
Now the next race goes over to Atlanta Motor Speedway. Your thoughts on going to a 1.5 mile circuit next that is known for being very slick and very difficult in a majority of cars. Your thoughts on Atlanta?
Yeah, I love Atlanta. I've won there twice in the IndyCar series, and I want to say, I could be wrong, but I want to say the first one was in this car in the GW12 the year before it switched over. So, and then I won there last year in the IR18 as well. So I love Atlanta. It's probably my favorite 1.5 mile track, you know, of those formats. I'm not a big Charlotte guy. I hate what they've done to Texas. Old Texas is okay, but for whatever reason, Atlanta and I get along. And it's funny you said slick, loose tracks. I mean, I think Phoenix in the IndyCar series last week was probably a perfect example of. I mean, the looser we can run the car, the happier I am. I know that's you know, not always the case with IndyCars, especially and IndyCar drivers, but I love it. So I'm looking forward to it.
Congratulations again on the run, Jason.
Thanks, guys.
Jason Galvin coming away with 13th in that battle for the race win. Unfortunate contact coming out of turn 2, Arjuna.
And what a race it was, Justin. I mean, the first of our Triple Crowns. We expected fireworks. We expected the chaos. I don't know if I necessarily expected that at the end of the day.
I don't think I expected that either with how things played out to close things out indeed, but I'm interested to see what will happen for the next race coming up at Atlanta Motor Speedway. 204 plus miles of racing action, 133 laps. It's going to be hot. It's going to be tough as well because it's a very slick track usually when it comes to the Atlanta Motor Speedway that puts on a great show regardless of the car type each time.
And I mean, I said tire shredding. I don't think there's any better description of what Atlanta is known for doing. And at the speeds that these Indy cars are going to reach, it will be curious what the strategy looks like. Phoenix and Gateway as well, though, back-to-back short tracks. Indeed, Justin, we've got 3 back-to-back weekends in May, all leading up, of course, to the iRacing Indy 500 and, of course, the Indianapolis 500 in the real world as well. That will be fun, and then we'll get a bit of a break. Our first breather after Gateway, almost a full month before we return at Michigan.
And I'm curious how Phoenix and Gateway go. We've seen how difficult Dirty Air was at Phoenix for both the Retro Series and the IndyCar Series. My eyes are also focused set on Gateway because that track also puts on some great racing, especially with the different approaches you have to have for 1 and 2 compared to 3 and 4.
And so that's going to wrap up our coverage here from round 4 of the Lionheart Speedway Series. Our first Triple Crown, no double points on the agenda because just 300 miles in length, but July 22nd, December 16th, as well as our championship finale. Double points on the table, and championship implications becoming a bit of a meme around me, apparently, but I will lean straight into it. That championship finale might be something to behold. Before we say goodbye, though, some thank yous to get to as well, because there's a whole team that powers the Lionheart Racing Series and includes their wonderful sponsors as well. If you're looking for entertaining sim racing content, look no further than the DMLC Racing channel. Follow former Lionheart Retro Series Driver of the Year Mark Cohn's racing escapades as he battles for wins and avoids wrecks with cat-like reflexes, all while providing commentary sure to make you laugh, cry, or both. Follow along by subscribing to the DMLC Racing channel on YouTube and like his Facebook page at the DMLC Racing channel. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows that we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com and don't forget to use the promo code Lionheart15, that's LIONHRT15, for 15% off all orders.
The Sim Experience AccuForce Pro V2 is the premier professional simulation racing steering system. The key to its incredible realism is the groundbreaking direct drive motor control system, providing a driving experience that's second only to the real thing. For more information on the entire Sim Experience ecosystem, visit simexperience.com.
For sim racers, the buttkicker Gamer 2 or Simulation Kit has the missing driver-to-car connection, providing more realism to your sessions. By accurately responding to in-game audio, you can feel the track like never before, providing increased vehicle handling and faster lap times. Are you ready for the most immersive sim experience in all of sim racing? For more information, visit thebuttkicker.com and don't forget to use the promo code LION2021 for 20% off all orders.
Minus 273 is the premier name in karting gloves. Their industry-leading gloves are super lightweight and durable, made of breathable poly spandex. Whether you're a kart or sim racer, Minus 273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more information on Minus 273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit minus273.biz, and don't forget to also use Minus 273 LHRS15 for 15% off orders.
It's not just those names as well. Take a look on your screen for the entire team that powers the Lionheart Speedway Series, powered by the DMLC Racing channel. To learn more about these names up on your screen, head on over to the Lionheart Racing Series website, and also to learn more about 3 different competitions you can take part in. It's time to say goodbye then on RaceSpot TV, and just a reminder, if you want to follow us for all of your esports action, you can first follow the Lionheart Series on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to stay up to date with all of the comings and goings in all 3 competitions in the Lionheart Series. ESTV, as always, has you covered for all of your esports coverage at Twitter on @co_ESTV, Facebook and Instagram at ESTV.co. RaceSpot TV has some of the best sim racing coverage that we have, including all 3 of the Lionheart competitions. You can stay involved at RaceSpot TV across YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram And if you're not already subscribed to us on YouTube, hit the button and the bell next to it to get notified every single time we go live with a great sim racing series we get to cover. So, round 4 in the Lionheart Speedway Series is done, and it's Chris Stouffer that's victor here from the virtual Homestead Miami Speedway. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time for more Lionheart Speedway's action, but if you don't want to miss out more Lionheart coverage, join us this Wednesday for the Lionheart IndyCar Series as it heads to Watkins Glen and the next road course on its journey. For now, though, it's Chris Stouffer in HyperX Victory Lane as he celebrates here from Homestead Miami Speedway.